Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Wine and Dine in Spite by Vienna Azu. Chapter 1. New Normal. If there's something that Izuku likes, it's normal days. Sure, he likes them now more than ever, particularly because now normal days include days where he's not on the verge of death, and because it means he can be a normal teenager. But he had normal days since he was in middle school, a poor, bullied, quirkless kid. But that's because normal days meant no hurt, or suicide threats, or going hungry. Normal days were nice. There are 3 things that a day needs for it to classify as a normal day. They all have to be met, or else it is not a normal day, but rather a boring day or a bad day, or even a good day. But no, normal days have requirements. First, he must be able to complete at least one regular, pre-planned activity in its intended way, which he must have had an idea of without any interruptions aside from water, food, sleep, or bathroom breaks. An uneventful day could count as a normal day fulfilling this requirement. Second, a normal day must be void of any unintended, unplanned, pleasant or unpleasant interactions with anyone outside of the members of his class, school, or his mother. Third, and this was the hardest, a normal day must be void of any threats, harm, or problems with himself, his family, his school, or, more recently added, his friends. And the fourth unspoken requirement is that it must not be a holiday or otherwise special day. So yes, getting a normal day was very hard. Today was shaping up to be a very normal day. Extra good. He'd gone shopping with Ochako and Tenya, and had a great time very normally buying his favourite merch with absolutely no issue at all. No card mix-ups, no lack of supplies like always. They'd gone to lunch and no one had spilled their food, no one had gotten food poisoning. They'd come back to the dorms and even walked by Kachan without him shouting anything at them or even threatening murder. So yes, this was definitely a very normal day. He was delighted. That is until they were sitting in the middle of Chako's room, sharing a pokey and watching a rerun of her favourite movie. Bundled up in blankets and with the lights dimmed low, the door slammed open. All 3 of them jumped in surprise and turned to see the disturbance. There, in Izuku's favourite hoodie he had lent him, dishevelled hair and messy clothes, hand in his hair and barefoot, a strikingly attractive face, Todoroki Shouto, standing there with a worried face and red-rimmed eyes. "I don't want to officiate your wedding." Ding ding ding. There goes Izuku's normal day. It would take an average, sensible and reasonable person a grand total of 6 minutes while in a conversation with Shouto Todoroki to realize he was socially inept. Yes, that seems to be very abruptly said, but it is the way in which Shouto would describe himself. Thus, the social ineptness. This is not due to any particular problem in his life, but rather is because of the added stress of having been born out of a quirk marriage, having had half his face burnt off by his own mother, and having watched that mother be abused for a lovely total of 7 years, just then to undergo that abuse himself for the next 9. Oh, he's doing that trauma dumping thing again, isn't he? He's working on it with his therapist. Apologies. He's never been particularly good at the whole socializing thing, that is. Always some kind of hesitation, some kind of wariness to people. He wasn't the first one to notice it. obviously. His private teachers had always talked to him about how little Shouto is very shy. He doesn't want to talk to anyone. He rarely speaks. And how Shouto needs to get better at talking to people. It'll be good for you. Hell, even his own shitty father had been bothered by it. He wasn't so much bothered by his lack of friends, but Shouto was characteristically quiet and nonchalant instead of being brash and aggressive like his father. His lack of friends wouldn't have been an issue if it had been a result of his voluntary rejection of friendships. So no, Shouto is not good at making friends. It's dinner time, they're sitting at the table, something they have tried to get into the habit of lately. Shouto is miraculously civil with his father and siblings, although it is significantly more difficult to get along with the former than with the latter. Family meals are much easier now, as easy as they can be, and then, in complete Endeavor nature, his father ruins the whole meal. So, he begins, Shouto hasn't been answering my calls. He speaks to the table as a whole, as if that would make it less obvious he's directly angry with Shouto. A moment of awkward silence settles over the whole table as everyone looks at each other, and by everyone he means Fuyumi and Natsuo, since they are the only ones that give each other a knowing look before turning back to the table, where his father glares at Shouto, who is pointedly looking at his bowl of food. His father grunts his way and glares. Anything to say, Shouto? Shouto lifts his gaze and meets his father's eyes with a hint of annoyance. You're right, I haven't. His sister starts getting a bit fidgety as she slides a number of side dishes towards their father, who ignores them and keeps on glaring at Shouto. Why? Do I not call you enough times? Do you get distracted with those friends of yours? Shouto sets his chopsticks down and straightens up. My friends have nothing to do with this. Ignoring you is an entirely conscious and deliberate decision. His father, making a sound akin to a growl, and slams his chopstick on the table. That's quite rude of you, says Shouto to him, especially considering Fuyumi, who put so much effort into making dinner. His father's beard starts lighting up slightly. Shouto, this lack of discipline cannot go any longer. You're not responsible at all. You ignore all of us. You clearly can't look after yourselves, screams his father. I will be sending a letter to UA demanding they allow you to move back into the house. Shouto's response is immediate and with all the amount of shock he feels. What? No. Well, you clearly don't care about your future enough to answer calls from me. Like you care about any of us. His father slams down his plate, anger in his entire body. I'm sick of your attitude. Give me one good reason I shouldn't make you move back here and teach you heroism personally. And this is the moment that seals Shouto's incredibly unfortunate fate. This is also the moment that will lead to the ruin of several very normal days. My boyfriend. Yes, my boyfriend. He will be very sad if I move out. The entire house falls into silence in a millisecond. Enji has stopped screaming, flames going out on his shoulders in a minute, eyes wide open, jaw hanging. Natsuo stops the bite he was taking, noodles slowly slipping out around the chopsticks and vegetables falling helplessly back into the stew. Fuyumi drops the stack of plates she was carrying, the shattering of plates breaking everyone out of it. Shit! Comes from Natsuo instantly, right before he remembers why everyone was frozen. You have a boyfriend? You have a boyfriend? Comes the twin voices of his siblings, face poking around Enji's shoulders to question Shouto. Shouto decides to double down on his decision to lie to his entire family and evasively turn back to his food. Of course I have a boyfriend, he shrugs, hoping to not have given too much detail. I'm a growing boy and everything, teenage years and all. What the hell am I saying? Nansuro looks like he wants to keep asking questions about Shouto's boyfriend, but it was stopped by Fumi placing a hand on his biceps, turning to Enji instead. Dad, are you okay? Enji is still standing there, mouth hanging open, hands in front of him as he stares at them. Then he slowly starts closing his mouth, life coming back to his eyes. That's not a good enough excuse. All three siblings snap their head towards him in an instant. What, you're not surprised? Asks Shouto. Or angry? Enji scoffs, sneers lightly. What, about the boyfriend? It's not the 2000s anymore. Modern technology can guarantee worthy offspring regardless. And if it's a classmate in your class, it must be a good quirk. Natsua gapes again at their father. So let me get this straight. You are A-OK with a boyfriend, but you disapprove of Shouto having a life outside of you? His father glares at Shoto's brother. You mean his disobedience, yes? Natsue falls into complete silence for a second. You are unbelievable. Fumi seems to notice the fight seconds away from breaking out and decides to latch onto the only good topic. Sorry, can we go back to the part about Shoto's boyfriend? Why didn't you tell us? All eyes turn to Shouto as he tries to make his brain work a mile a second to get some answers. It just never came up. Which is a lie, but there's no need to point it out. I ask you about school all the time, she says. She sighs again before speaking. Just some guy, says Shouto, as he in fact does not have a boyfriend, and thus does not know who his boyfriend is. Just some guy? His father demands. It better not be one of the students from the general education. Those good-for-nothings will only bring you down. Shouto then realizes that he is horrifyingly getting relationship advice from his father, who is the last person to know about a good relationship. Fumi places a hand on his father's bicep, from where she is standing, and speaks to Shouto directly. You have a week-long break next week, right? Why don't you bring him over to stay with us? She suggests, looking around the room. That way, everyone can meet him and you can spend some time with us and him. No one has protested yet, which puts Shouto on a precarious position. He should say no, revealing the whole thing is a fluke, that he does not have a boyfriend, and that he absolutely cannot bring him over to stay with them. He should also just tell his father that Shouto hates him and would rather die than spend one more minute with him. So he does. Okay. Or not. His sister starts picking up the shards of plate on the floor while Shouto finishes his dinner and Natsuo starts to clean up the table. We did not finish the discussion around the dorms, growled the father. Fumi instead picks up the bowls and interrupts. I think we've done more than enough emotions for today. We can talk about this later. She smiles at the two of them and continues, Shouto, you'd probably either go to sleep or get back to UA. Right, he nods. Fumi ushers him out of the door as Shouto starts to pick up his things, mentally trying to plan the best way to go around this situation. The first thing that comes to mind is to reveal the lie, which is absolutely out of the question, considering the fact that his father would kill him if he was told that Shouto lied about it or to trick him. That would most likely end in a lot of yelling and a lot of fire. Overall, not good. Second thought that came into mind is to try to ask one of his classmates to pretend to be his boyfriend. And that starts a much more finicky train of thought. Who would be Shouto's boyfriend? He tries to go through the list of people who both might agree and his father would be civil with. His first thought is either part of a hero family, top scores in class, responsible and honest. too honest, way too honest for the lie Shouto has to keep up. Ida would rat him out on accident in a heartbeat. His second thought is surprisingly enough Bakugo. First place in the sports festival, top scorer in the entrance exam, effective and fire-adjacent quirk, likes cooking, all hypothetically good traits, if it wasn't Bakugo who had them. Because that reminds Shouto that this has to be his boyfriend, and Bakugo would not be his boyfriend. Which leaves him with the third best option. That's the one that scares him the most. Izuku Midoriya. It's tricky interacting with Midoriya, that is, because Shouto feels so many emotions when he's around Midoriya. It's like his heart is caged up and Midoriya is lockpicking it, trying to make sense of Shouto's emotions, fiddling around to find a ridge to latch onto and unlock his heart. And the very worst part of it, Shouto wants him to break the lock. Shouto likes being around Midoriya, loves it even, makes him feel comfortable and safe, but it's tricky because it feels like his emotions will all burst out of his chest at the first touch, and whatever friendship he's built will be destroyed by Shouto's lack of restraint when he's around him. But of all people Shouto could have as a boyfriend, pretend boyfriend that is, Midoriya is the one he'll have the most normalcy with. Because Midoriya is part of Shouto's normal. He's part of his morning bowl of cereal while the greeneth chugs water after a run. He's part of the smiles, or attempts at smiles in Shouto's case, they send to each other in the middle of class. He's part of the easy conversation during lunchtime. He's part of the afternoon study session or evening hangouts between the two of them. He's part of the loud class dinners and quiet midnight snacks. He's part of what makes Shouto's day a normal day. Now, the only thing Shouto needs is a yes. The door closes behind him as Fumi sends him off with some packed food and his school stuff. As soon as Shouto could hear the click of the lock behind him, he searched for the number. 1 ring, 2 ring, 3... Hello? Midoriya, I fucked up. Chapter 2. Very, very extraordinary. There, sitting in Izuku's bedroom that night, wrapped in blankets with the glow of Izuku's laptop on their face. Mindless hero analysis playing on it. Neither of them found themselves fully focused. As far as Shouto could tell, with Izuku's lack of rapid speech and Shouto's obvious enthusiasm at the play-by-play explanation of Mount Lady's most recent fight. From under the covers, a freckled hand reached out to press the spacebar on the computer, the pause symbol showing up on the screen. The green-haired boy turns towards Shouto, a complicated expression on his face. Do you want to talk about it now? Talk about what? Answers Shouto, as if he didn't know what exactly needed to be talked about. Izuku sighs, a soft, delicate sound that Shouto rarely hears in its true form, giving the boys incredible patience and tolerance towards their classmates. Todoroki, you know I'm always willing to help you, but I'm not sure I can do this. I mean, how am I supposed to do this? And in a way your family will like? What if I mess up and they pull you out of UA? We absolutely cannot let that happen. I can't let that happen. And if it was my fault, I'd just start talking about All Might and heroics and school and everyone else, and that would lead into a conversation that could reveal the truth. I'm the worst person to pick for this job. I've never even dated anyone. How am I supposed to date someone like you? Todoroki, Shouto. A confused sound came out of the other boy. What? You should start calling me Shouto, if you're gonna date, that is. Izuku looks at him with all the exasperation his freckled face can possibly pull together. I can't do this. Fake date you, I mean, anyways. I just can't. Shouto shuts the computer in front of them and twists his hand into the blankets draped over them. But you can. You're the only one I trust to do this with. I thought about other people, you know. I tried to reason about who would be best to take to meet my father. And you were the best option. It's always you. Shota's hand reaches out for Izuku's wrist. A surge of emotions in his chest, and he can't quite figure out why he's feeling. I wouldn't pick anyone else other than you. Because you understand. You understand what this means to me. You understand what I'm trying to do. The "you understand me" is what's left unsaid. He hears the hitch at Izuku's breath for a brief second before the boy turns his hand around, palms up to brush at Shoto's own wrist. As he pulls him closer, as if for a secret, he laughs a soft, breathy thing, and starts to trace the inside of Shoto's wrist. Yeah? You sure it's not just because you want to tell your dad that you're dating All Might's son? He grins. Shouto laughs back at him and bumps their head together. I like to think of that as an added plus. He smiles. Izuku smiles back at him in silence before looking away. You do realize I suck at acting and might make your dad absolutely livid the moment he sees me, right? Shouto reaches a hand to mess with Izuku's emerald curls. I'm counting on it. They put the computer back on, the theorist's voice filling the room again. The Todoroki household is larger than any house Izuku has ever been in, including Kachan's, which is saying a lot, considering the blonde's designer parents have always had an absolutely huge house. But it's something Izuku expects from the number 2 hero. They arrive at Shouto's home on a late September afternoon, with Izuku's bags packed and being held by the dual user himself, and Shouto's favorite scarf wrapped around Izuku's neck. He had suggested this, mentioning how their charade would seem more believable if they began implying romance before even knocking on the main entrance. Izuku had agreed, and as such, his dearly beloved Hawk's jacket was draped over Shouto's shoulder, while the keychain on the boy's phone includes a small heart and a custom-made Deku charm, which connected to Izuku's Shouto charm, courtesy and product of Hudson May herself, who had ensured they would interlock via magnets when pressed together. It was a sweet touch, and a touch that Izuku would definitely keep even after this whole thing was over. Maybe, just maybe, Shouto would too. Izuku goes to wrap his hand around the boy's arm as he moves, a move he hopes would convey intimacy and care, aside from helping him keep warm in the cold air around them. Shouto jumped at the feeling of the touch, reeling back in surprise before realizing what was happening. Is this okay? Izuku asks in a quiet voice. Shouto makes a sound of acceptance, barely a whisper as he stares back at Izuku with nervous eyes. Shouto unlocks the door and starts to guide Izuku through several doors, trails, and buildings. They arrive at the main building dining room / living room. A small table sits in the center, directly facing the door and clearly meant for private home dinner rather than sophisticated social meeting. Izuku also sees the dainty pair of dress shoes neatly aligned with the scattered pair of white sneakers beside it. My siblings must be home already. Do you mind waiting while I go get them? Izuku nods as he's led to a small love seat that is placed next to a window. The afternoon sunlight spills through the window as Izuku waits on the love seat. It's been a while since he's been home for the holidays. It's been well over 10 years since he spent the holidays with anyone but his mum. He thinks about what she must be thinking right now. He's been vague with her, only mentioning how he was gonna go spend the holidays with a friend due to her being troubled over what he was gonna do while she was on a business trip. His mother is often gone for the holidays, choosing to do extra work and attend events no one else can, in order to try and rack up some money for them. He's been very troubled about it as a little kid, and even gone as far as to tell her he didn't love her. He had much changed since then, rather forgiving his mother and having learned to understand her sorrows. Not like anything had really changed, just him growing up and his mother being equally busy. He's startled out of his thoughts by the sight of Shouto reaching to hold his hand. Izuku lets him, standing up as Shouto leads him towards the main area. "Natsuo, behave!" scolds Fuyumi as she tries to smooth down part of Natsuo's hair. They both freeze at Izuku's entrance. They clearly dressed for the occasion, with Fuyumi's formal white dress and Natsuo's light blue dress shirt with slacks. Izuku feels a little silly in his school uniform. "He's your boyfriend? Izuku Midoriya?" yells Natsuo as he peels Fuyumi off him. Shouto squeezes Izuku's hand as he takes a small step in front of him. "Yes, is that an issue?" Natsuo smiles widely and skirts around Shouto towards Izuku. He places a hand on Izuku's shoulder, and Izuku jumps at being startled. "Not at all." He smiles, all teeth, slim grey eyes like Shouto's. "Do come in, Midoriya." He lets go of Shouto's hand as he's led away from them, fingers twitching to take hold of the dual user's warm skin. Again, he balls his hand into a fist in embarrassment as Natsuo takes him around to another already prepared and served table with a clearly pre-planned dinner. Fuyumi rushes towards them and starts to speak to him. "Ah, you arrived earlier than we expected you to, but I'm sure you two are already hungry. Hero school must be really tough." Izuku sits down where Fuyumi points him to, and Shouto goes to sit next to him. For a second, he looks at Shouto's eyes, and the entire charade is lost. The warmth of the smile that seeps through Shouto's lips is wholeheartedly his own genuine one. The softness of the touch with which he massages Izuku's finger webbing is entirely true. Izuku's head feels like jelly, and he returns the smile, shaking fingers, turning palm up to reciprocate the touch. The moment is broken as Fuyumi and Natsuo sit in front of them. Shouto drops his hands, and Izuku feels a pang of something stir in his gut. Fuyumi starts talking as she motions for them to eat. "It's so lovely to have you here, Midoriya. I don't believe we've met yet. Well, at least not officially. I saw you at the sports festival, though." Izuku fiddles with his fingers as he replies, yeah, thank you. I didn't really do that well. Sorry that's your first impression of me." He laughs. Shouto's sister dismisses his words with a hand and keeps on talking. "Oh, nonsense. We all saw what you did during the obstacle course, and your battles were incredible. Thank you, Izuku smiles. I'm flattered. Shouto cuts in before Izuku can say anything else, holding onto Izuku's hand on the table and speaks for him. He doesn't give himself enough credit, says Shouto in his usual deadpan voice. But he's one of the most amazing people I've ever met. There is an edge of something in Shouto's voice, something Izuku can't quite recognize, but that causes him to feel lightheaded. Izuku smiles. Okay, I'm tired of dancing around it, says Natsuo as he puts down his food and interlocks his hand in front of him. So, Midoriya, I hear you're dating my brother. Fumi gapes at Natsuo and hits him on the shoulder as Izuku's mouth dries up. They've rehearsed this. Shouto and him, that is. They've practiced how they will handle this and how they will react and what they'll say. Yet Izuku can say nothing because he's frozen in place and anxious. A hand reaches out in front of his own and gives it an encouraging squeeze. He turns to see Shouto, chopstick still raised to his mouth, and gaze on his bowl. Yet his left hand is wrapped firmly around Izuku's interwoven ones. Izuku's body heats up, and his chest tightens again. He wraps his pinky around Shouto's in response, and the warm left hand lets go. Yes, says Izuku confidently, cheeks tinting red as he speaks. I am dating Shouto, and God, he can't even begin to process what it feels like to himself saying his first name. To go from thinking about intimacy of his name to feeling its syllables roll off his tongue. To voice his name like he's never voiced anyone else's. To say a first name with the conscious and the mind to know what it means for him, and what it means for them, and what it means for what they are. Shouto, huh? Teases Natsuo, smirk on his lips. Yeah, utters Izuku nervously. This is absolutely the best thing that could have happened to the Todoroki family. Both Izuku and Shouto whip their heads toward the college student as he shrugs through the words. I mean, of all people, Shouto, you fell in love with the one person that would piss our father off the most? All Might's son? Really? Wait, what? Tries to cut in Izuku, because apparently delusions run the family. That was part of the reason I fell in love with Izuku in the first place. Cuts in Shouto. His heart skips a beat as the words spark another wave of the something that courses through Izuku. Hearing his name in that low, monotone, yet somehow affectionate voice. It feels odd, it feels different, and yet it feels right. It feels like coming home after a day of training. It feels like the warm hand between his shoulders when his muscles feel tense and worn out. It feels like the rhythm they easily fall into while fighting side by side. Shouto's mouth forms around Izuku's name, and Izuku is reminded why Shouto chose him for the job. Suddenly, much of his anxiety disappears. Yeah, what did you say? Izuku laughs. Fumi and Natsuo look at each other in an unspoken conversation, communicating a number of ideas and thoughts that Izuku is fully unaware of. Well, I think it's lovely that Shouto was able to find someone who was his true match in such a good environment, says Fumi, clasping her hands. And with you of all people, Midoriya, how romantic. She smiles. Izuku is partly left wondering the reason why he's such an important part of Shouto's pretend relationship, considering his friend could have practically anyone he wanted based on his handsome looks and his quirk, but decided not to further question or follow up on his thought in fear it would compromise their charade. He just nods along with what she says and turns back to his plate. After a considerable amount of time and a considerable amount of questions about Izuku's relationship with Shouto, the clock on the wall startles them out of their conversation as its loud clangs fill the room. Fumi checks her wristwatch and starts to pick up the plates from the table in a startled manner. Goodness, look at the time. It's so late already. She collects both their plate and Shouto helps Izuku stand up from the table in a very gentlemanly manner. You two better start getting ready to sleep. If you don't have plans for tomorrow, Shouto, I was hoping you would show Midoriya around the house and maybe make some time to the forest around here. Father said he would join us for dinner tomorrow night, so I wanted to give you a bit of peace before that. Okay, says Shouto in a completely Shouto fashion and warming Izuku's heart. Right, so you two better head to Shouto's room. I presume you'll be sharing the bed, is that right? Wait, what? Okay, says Shouto, also in an absolute Shouto fashion. Chapter 3. Before and After. Of all his current eccentric habits and odd mannerisms and tactless behaviors, Shouto's very, very favorite one is watching Izuku, which is saying a lot considering he has quite a bit of those, among which are cracking ice, organizing pencils by color hue, and writing down notes of the occasional bird song, which are all very entertaining, and yet his favorite is still watching Izuku, because there is so much to watch every time he partakes in this activity. The halls are quiet as Izuku and Shouto move through the house towards the dual-toned boy's bedroom. Shouto observes Izuku as they walk side by side, the way his fingers twitch next to Shouto's, the way he keeps brushing hair away from his freckled face. He's nervous. Shouto can tell, but he shouldn't be. Shouto's right leg reached out, attempting something he has never done before. He lightly taps Izuku's left foot with the tip of his own as they keep on walking. The corridors seem to stretch forever, as Shouto attempts to guide them towards his room. When they finally do get there, Shouto is the first one to step through the doorway. He starts to gather his things to go about his normal routine before he notices Izuku standing by the closet, awkwardly shifting in place and looking overall uncomfortable. You can sit down, you know, says Shouto, pointing at the large bed, his father's insistent, in the middle of the room. I'm not sure how you want this to work, Izuku says, cheeks tinted pink and gaze flickering between objects. Sorry? Says Shouto, pajama pants already in his arms and gathering his shirt. Well, I mean, starts Izuku, I'm technically only your boyfriend in public, he says as his blush deepens. So, I'm not really sure how comfortable you are with us sleeping in the same bed. Or, we don't have to do that if you don't want us to. Whatever you want really, it is your house and your room after all. Shouto looks at him with a puzzled look on his face as he thinks about Izuku's words. Why would I be uncomfortable? We've slept on the same bed before, multiple times even, says Shouto. And what a silly question it is, really, because they have. Countless times have they slept next to each other in all kinds of arrangements. They've never really crossed the bridge of physical contact, save for the occasional accidental finger brush, so there's not even a need for Izuku to think he'll be too warm in Shouto's bed. After all, Shouto has learned what Izuku's preferred temperature is after much time spent together, and he has subconsciously learned to maintain the temperature in every room they're in. The sudden silence in the room throws Shouto off and brings him back down to earth from his thoughts. Did I do something wrong? Asked Shouto, deciding to get it over with if Izuku has a problem with all this now. No, not at all. It's just... He cuts himself off, looking off to the side and closing his body language. It's a look Shouto hates, and he loves almost all of Izuku's looks. Shouto sets down his clothes on his desk chair and moves to sit on the bed, nudging Izuku to do so too. I really want to make a good impression on your family, says Izuku. Whatever I do could lead to you leaving UA. Izuku looks away and starts to trace patterns on Shouto's solid grey bedding. What if they make assumptions? What if they think that I'm some sort of vulgar nymph desecrating their precious sun? Okay, let them. Shouto can't help but let out a huff of laughter, both at Izuku's words and at the flabbergasted expression he wears at Shouto's reply. What? Shouto runs a hand through Izuku's curls, teasing the hair and brushing it out of his face at the same time. I don't want you to overthink this, says Shouto. I didn't bring you here because I wanted you to fix how my family sees me, or you for that matter. But I still should... No buts. The more you try to figure out what my family is thinking, the more you'll stray away from what they actually are. If they want to believe we're in here having wild, passionate sex, Shouto! Then let them. The best thing to do right now is to trust they can see how much you mean to me and for who you are, not for what they assume you to be. Izuku smiles at him. A warm, bubbly feeling goes through Shouto. He does his best to try and smile and pats Izuku's mat of her hair lightly. Shouto stands up and collects his clothes from the nightstand. I'm going to change in the bathroom. Feel free to change in here if you want to, or if you want to wait for me to trade off, that's also fine. I won't be long. Izuku gives him a smile from where he is and nods at him as he starts to dig through his bag. Shouto walks away, muttering to himself about vulgar nymphs and laughs on his lips. When Shouto comes back into the room, Izuku is already dressed in his own nightwear, which consists of a t-shirt with the words pajama shirt printed on them and the absolutely most ridiculous pair of all-white shorts Shouto has ever seen in his life. However, Shouto happens to like all of Izuku's looks, so he ignores the shorts and focuses on the upper half of Izuku's body. They get into bed, and after soft and sweet mutters of good night, Shouto hears Izuku's breath fade into slow, quiet patterns. There are many things Shouto has seen that no one else has. Many things that he has had the privilege enough to witness about the green-haired boy that will come to others after much, much time. One of these things is the way he sleeps. They've slept together before, in the non-vulgar sense, as aforementioned. They've laid side by side in Izuku's bed, exhaustion on their lips and dawn just short of being upon them. They've seen parts of each other, seen scars of each other that they haven't come to explain to the other. They've done this before. And yet, Shouto's entire body feels energized as he watches Izuku sleep. He turns around towards the window with his back towards Shouto, but his shirt was slightly shifted, and at this moment Shouto loves watching Izuku. He watches the way in which the muscles on his lower back expand and contract with each breath, freckles poking out from just above his waistband, forming constellations upon constellations. He watches the way his shoulders shift and the white fabric clings onto his skin, highlighting every curve and every edge of the boy's torso. It's almost ethereal to a degree. Ethereal in the angelic sense. Ethereal in the sense that it feels right. That Shouto can only think about the possible reasons he hasn't seen this before, hasn't seen the way that Izuku's viridian hair curls up at the nape of his neck and trails up from in between his shoulders, the way the same viridian hair catches on the moonlight that filters through the curtain, giving the boy a sensible glow, and creating just the right highlights on his cheekbones. Shouto has always been told he's attractive. His looks almost always came up when talking about him, and how he is not only strong but handsome, despite his glaring scar on his left side. And yet, as Shouto admires his friend, soft puffs of warm air and rosy cheeks on his cold skin, all round features, yet lean and muscled, with the universe as his backdrop, no mountain range, no moonlit sea, no natural wonder, and certainly no half-burned face can ever come close to being as sublime. He closes his eyes, Midoriya Izuku burnt on his eyelids. When Izuku wakes up, he's in an unfamiliar place. Usually, and considering how prone he is into getting in trouble, this would be considered a very bad thing, for multiple reasons. It takes Izuku him looking at his surroundings to realize that he is, in fact, in Shouto's room, with Shouto very pointedly being absent from it, his bed of the side still warm to Izuku's touch. But then again, Shouto just runs unusually hot. Izuku panics for a second, picking up his phone and checking the time. It's not too early, nor too late. It's around the time one would wake up on a normal weekend. Shouto is still not here, and it puts Izuku on edge. He thinks about last night's conversation, how weird and insecure he must have looked. His face flushes as he mentally scolds himself, but he doesn't have the time to dwell on it before the door to Shouto's bathroom opens and the boy himself peeks into the room. Izuku smiles at the sight. "Hi," says Izuku. "Hi," says Shouto. "I didn't know you had woken up." Shouto still looks very much fresh out of bed. He's still in his pajamas. His hair is ruffled on his hair in a way that looks impossibly soft. "I just did. Have you been awake for too long?" "No, just went to the bathroom and washed my face." He starts to stand up, gathering his clothes to dress himself up. "What time are we supposed to leave today?" "Any time you want," says Shouto, taking off his shirt in a way that makes Izuku feel like he should be looking away, even though they've spent countless times dressing and undressing themselves in the same room. "I guess it's more up to you. I'm not entirely sure what we're even gonna do," Izuku replies. "There's not much to do. Showing you around the house really won't take long. The forest is very lackluster." "I'm sure it will be entertaining," says Izuku, turning around to take his shirt off and picking one of the ones he bought. "You say that now, but you won't be saying that when it's just you, me, and Mother Nature." "Yeah, well, you're plenty entertaining enough," says Izuku without much thought. Silence falls into the room before quiet sound comes from Shouto. "Oh, thank you." Izuku can tell he's trying to smile, or at least twist his mouth in a way that conveys Shouto is pleased. They have breakfast in the kitchen together in relative silence, save for the whispered conversation in between them until Shouto's sister walks in. "Good morning, you two." "Morning," says Shouto, with all the enthusiasm of someone who might be less of a morning person than he tells himself he is. "Hi," greets Izuku. "Midoriya, how did you sleep?" Izuku doesn't feel ready to admit that sleeping next to his not-boyfriend is the best sleep he's had in a while, so he just makes a non-committal hum and shrugs his shoulders. Fumi laughs a little, so Izuku assumes that probably meant she won't pry too much into it. Under the table, Shouto's leg swings while it hangs off the stool, occasionally wrapping around Izuku's in a way that sends a feeling of warmth through his spine and all the way to his fingertips. He hits his foot back against Shouto and lightly presses their thighs together, and immediately the temperature seems to rise. Fumi gives them a look of something and leaves the room, letting Izuku and Shouto get back to the talking in whispers. The past 40 minutes have made Shouto place hiking within his top 5 favorite activities to do with Izuku. Not above combat or watching movies, of course, but high nonetheless. His heartbeat thumps in his ears as Shouto continues to walk side by side with Izuku. He still is in front of him, who half walks, half hops across the greenery in front of the two of them. Shouto is too caught up in the staring at the way Izuku seems to flow like water across the forest to notice how far behind Izuku he is. In fact, he doesn't notice until Izuku himself turns towards Shouto and starts to say something. Except now Shouto is far too caught up in the way Izuku looks, the way sweat dampens his face, and the way the rosy colors of his cheeks spill across his face, down his neck, far down where Shouto can't bring himself to think about. The way his freckles stand out against his lightly tanned skin, and the way his green locks stick to his forehead wrapped around his jaw. Shouto is far too caught up in the way Izuku's heavy breathing are loud in a way he's never had time to think about before during combat. Oh, this moment will come back to haunt him for sure. He's still not quite certain of what Izuku is saying, but the boy had apparently been waiting for a reply that never quite came as the green-haired boy starts to make his way back towards Shouto, little bunny hops ever present and his arms out to steady himself. Shouto is vaguely able to react by the time he has some armful of Izuku, and he hooks his arms around Izuku's armpits as they both tumble to the ground, the dirt clouds around them as Shouto coughs to the air, and Izuku coughs into Shouto's shoulder. The air clears as Shouto waves a hand, and Izuku pushes up on his chest, their faces inches from each other. Shouto can feel Izuku's hot breath against him, and he gets a close look at the face that had him entranced just seconds earlier. He hears an embarrassed squeal from Izuku, and he feels the urge to smile. "Hey," whispers Shouto, his mere voice shifting Izuku's hair. "Hi," Izuku nervously smiles. "I tripped." "So it would seem. We should get up." "We should." They get up. Izuku dusts himself off, making brief effort of brushing the dust off Shouto's shoulder before they both sit down on a nearby rock. "Were you going to say something before you tripped at all?" Not really. I was just going to make sure I wasn't going too fast for you." "I can keep up," says Shouto. "Don't worry about me." I don't think I'll ever be able to do that, Shouto. And they're alone in the forest, where it's just two of them, alone where appearances and names and behaviors are not important, alone where Shouto's own name coming from Izuku's pink petal lips with the amount of warmth and care that there is behind it, in a way that elevates it beyond something to be called, beyond something to be named, and towards what he imagines a prayer would sound like. Alone, where he could do it, where he could just close the space between them and allow himself to explore what an unknown emotion sounds like, allow himself to discover what it means to feel the tightness in his chest and the warmth on his face. But he doesn't, because his mind is still catching up to Izuku's breath on his lips, and his own mouth has gone slack. Yeah, I don't suppose I will either. They eventually head back, a comfortable silence falling over them, leaving them to be surrounded by sounds of nature around the two. And it's just as pleasant to watch Izuku here in the woods as it is to watch Izuku in their classroom, as it is to watch Izuku in his own house. So he goes back to watching, back to gazing, back to admiring. Chapter 4. Fire and Flame. As a general rule of thumb, and properly aligned with his previously generated judgment, Izuku did not particularly like Endeavor. He never liked Endeavor, to be honest, since before his UA days. And all that not for any particular reason back then, but rather because Izuku couldn't bring himself to respect and approve of the hero who sees the public relations and civilian interactions as much more of a hassle than a responsibility. With his own idol being All Might, Izuku always had been of the belief that heroes should save everyone with a smile, or, at the very least, try for a somewhat pleasant manner, while still being reassuring. It's one of the major deficits he thinks Kachan should work on, not that the blonde would listen to him anyways. Either way, he didn't like Endeavor back then, and he doesn't like Endeavor now, with everything Shouto had told him. Mostly because of the whole deal with Shouto. Izuku tries not to think too much about it, as it oftentimes just leaves him feeling upset and useless, which the dual user himself loves to reassure, but Izuku can say that a majority of his current dislike of Endeavor is because he's frustrated at his inability to have done something about Shouto's childhood, despite the fact that he, A, did not know Shouto at all, and B, Shouto would probably not have appreciated any help from a quirkless kid like him. Yeah, that's another thought he'll have to file for later consideration. In any case, his priorities lie with the kind-hearted boy that he has come to know and who he has come to see as everything Izuku could have asked for in a friend. So no, he still does not like Endeavor, and he does not want to spend more time than he has to around the man outside of heroics and official school business. All this to say that Izuku was not particularly pleased when the pro-hero's muscled frame walked through the door, and the same afternoon that he hours ago spent tumbling with Shouto on the dirt and showing cool leaves at each other, and by the sight of Endeavor himself getting one look at his viridian curls and curling his lips as he glares at Izuku with narrowed eyes and squared shoulders. Enji Todoroki wasn't too pleased to see him either. To his credit, the man could intimidate, likely one of his approaches to heroism, but a learned skill nonetheless. Izuku felt his frame shrink. He shied behind Shouto, who was one step ahead of him, both figuratively and literally. "What is he doing in my house?" Endeavor asked tightly. Father, this is Izuku Midoriya. Introduces Shouto slightly emotionally towards where Izuku hides behind him. I am well aware who he is, All Might's son. Are you fucking... I am not... Izuku tries, but his words are ignored in favor of a glare from Endeavor and a nudge from Shouto. Yes, whatever, says Shouto. I don't see why he should be here. Your partner will be... Boyfriend. My boyfriend. Newsflash, it's Izuku. Izuku is my boyfriend. Says Shouto, blush on his face and fingers twitching on his side. Endeavor seemed to go through all stages of grief at once, as his face twists and morphs before his beard and hair flares up incredibly. What? He yells. Izuku takes a step behind Shouto as Shouto takes one towards his father. You heard what you heard. He is my boyfriend. This is who I chose to be with. Shouto's father goes fully silent as he seems to contemplate what he was just told. He suddenly flares up again and fully looms over Shouto. Are you doing this to spite me, boy? He growls. What? Asks Shouto. Bringing this boy into our house, having him as your partner. Are you doing this out of spite? Demands Endeavor. Everyone goes silent, and Izuku watches Shouto make a dry, humorless chuckle. You're unbelievable, he says. Izuku can feel the tension in the room rise along with the temperature as Endeavor glares straight back at Shouto. You are unbelievable. Answer me, demands Endeavor. No, you can't even be happy for me for having found someone I can be happiest with without somehow making it about yourself, Shouto accuses. Izuku tries to calm him down, raising a hand towards his shoulder but limiting himself from touching him. No, not yet. Making it about myself, you insolent child! You started all of this! Yells back Endeavor. The temperature dropped suddenly as Izuku watches a frost creep onto Shouto's right cheekbone. You are a pathetic excuse of a father. I owe you nothing, he says sternly. You owe me your life and success. I didn't want either of those. Endeavor falls silent and Shouto's breath intensifies. A soft gasp escapes Izuku's lips as he finally places an even softer hand on Shouto's forearm. The words escape him before he's aware of what he's saying as both his hands find Shouto's right. Shouto, love, I think we need a moment. He shakily guides his hands onto Shouto's face. Heterochromic eyes meet viridian ones as they stare at each other in the ground. In the background, he can hear Fumi trying to coax Shouto's father into forgetting about this. It's no use arguing right now, darling. It won't be any easier. A shaky nod and a whispered hum exits Shouto as he turns towards the doorway that starts the path to his room. Izuku turns towards Fumi as he starts to pull away with Shouto. We'll just be 1 second. Feel free to start on dinner, says Izuku, well aware that Shouto tends to lose his appetite when his emotions rise. The rest of the family seems like that they want to say something, but it ultimately remains a mystery to Izuku, as he finds himself being led to Shouto's room. The door slams against the wall as the two-toned boy throws it open before he stomps his way to his bed and abruptly sits on it, hands instantly on his hair and shaky breaths coming from him. Izuku follows him quietly and gently, softly closing the door behind them and taking a moment to walk over to Shouto and sit facing him. Izuku's hand shakingly moves towards Shouto's skin and his fingers wrap around one of the boy's elbows. He guides Shouto's right hand until it rests interlocked with his own in between. The two of them just presses their legs together. Moments pass as Shouto starts to calm down. His breathing slows. His brows return to its neutral position. His eyes look tired and not erratic. "I'm sorry for ruining tonight," Izuku says. Shouto comes back to full awareness and he shakes his head. "It's not your fault. My father is just irrational and obnoxious." Izuku laughs. Shouto laughs. "I suppose you did try to warn me, back when we started this whole thing." "That I did," says Izuku, withdrawing his hand from Shouto's to tangle them together. Shouto starts. "I don't really regret it. I don't really regret it though. Not actually." "You don't?" "No. All in all, this was better than I expected. It's nice being around you." Izuku can feel something start to bubble in his gut, and he feels all tingly again all of a sudden. That's very kind of you, especially considering what the very sight of me does to your father. He's just an asshole. I can understand why he can't be anything but spiteful about us. That's not very nice of him." "I don't think he would know what nice sounds like." They both laugh. Some more silence falls over them. "You," starts Shouto. "You called me something before going out of the room. When you called my name, you called me your love. You called me your darling." Izuku flushes at the reminder of something he did more out of instinct rather than out of actual thought. His stomach does somersaults. His heart beats oddly fast. Yeah, sorry. It's just something my father used to call my mother way back then. Something I've heard Kachan's parents call each other. Didn't really think about it," he apologizes. "You should do it more." "Sorry?" It fits with the nature of our relationship, I guess," says Shouto, suddenly very interested on the tiles of the floor, his face tinted the quite lovely pink he's seen a few times before. "I wouldn't mind if you did it more." Now it's Izuku's time to blush as he nods quietly. "Okay, I'll try." "Okay." Izuku glances at the clock on Shouto's wall, finding it being 20 past the time they went to Shouto's room. "We should probably go on, rejoin dinner with your family." Shouto glances at the clock too and nods along. "You're right, we should go." Izuku stands up and opens the door with a subtle smile. "After you, darling." It was safe to say by now, dinner with the in-laws, or rather singular in-law, in this case, was absolutely and thoroughly ruined for Izuku. He sits next to Shouto, now that they were at the back of the table, Endeavor still glaring daggers at Izuku, unwilling to let up in his attempt to kick Izuku from his house. Not that Izuku is really paying attention, since Shouto has started drawing patterns on his thigh, and he's far too distracted with his heart trying to beat out of his chest at the gesture. Shouto's sister, bless her, had tried to restart some semblance of a conversation around 5 times already, all but one of them thoroughly foiled and dropped the moment Endeavor and Shouto disagreed on any aspect, which happened quickly and not sparingly. The last attempt, however, had managed to bring back Izuku into the conversation, enough for him to try and chime in on one of the topics which had so far just managed to make Endeavor look even more annoyed, and Shouto to jump to Izuku's defense like live wire, wholly prepared to derive the attention away from the green-haired boy at the moment's notice. Inconvenient, yet very effective in terms of engagement. I agree with Izuku. Hero rankings are unfair to the amount of heroes there are. What would he know about rankings? Neither one of you is even an official hero. Well, clearly more than you. You're still number 2 in the people's hearts, replies Shouto. You've got some nerve, boy. Maybe it's hereditary. Shouto, it's really not a big deal, cries Izuku. He's still wrong, Shouto argues back. Natsuo chooses to intercept the moment marvelously. So, Izuku, you never told us how you and Shouto started dating. Endeavor grumbles as all the attention is turned towards Izuku, who cowers away from it a little while trying to find his words. Well, there was the sports festival, and then there was our battle. Oh, for fuck's sake, mutters Endeavor. And Shouto asks me out, right, Shouto? Shouto nods, which is not very helpful, but does let Izuku know that he's not still focusing on pissing off his father. And the rest was history. It is unbelievable that train of a battle could possibly be what made you attracted to him, Shouto, exclaimed Endeavor. Disappointing news for you, then, snarks Shouto. Yeah, that was the official end of the conversation. This was the first meeting of parents, or singular parent in this case, was definitely not shaping up to what Izuku had hoped it would be. It could not possibly get any worse though. That, dear readers, is called sarcasm, because yes, it could get a lot worse. Izuku has been raised with manners. Whatever manners his mother could teach him anyways. That means that he has, since a very young age, been taught to wash his own dishes, in addition to those of his guests when having one in a foreign house. This does unfortunately translate to volunteering to wash all of their dishes, as he has been taught, and as any devoting boyfriend would do. He is scrubbing one of the plates when the temperature of the room suddenly spikes, and he can feel a looming presence in the room. His body tenses at the prospect, since he seems to be able to tell what comes before even turning around to see who has just entered the kitchen. The heavy footsteps continue towards him, and he begins drying his hands, ready to face whatever will happen. He slowly turns around, and with a faked calmness, his heart beating hard, yet his manner relaxed and easy. Endeavor stands before him in all his glory, frown on his face, and tense body. He glares at Izuku for a few moments before a sound akin to a growl comes from the man. Izuku tenses up, squares his shoulders back, and looks up to the man with stern eyes. "Did you need to talk to me?" he asks, as calmly as his shaking breath and unstable manner will allow him. Endeavor stares at him for a few moments, still glaring before his face twists into a scowl of disapproval. "You're not meant to be here," he begins before he tilts his head up with pride. "You are not good enough for my son, and I will not stand for your wiles or your treachery to stain this family's honor or his integrity," he says. Izuku feels something bubble up in his stomach, something toxic and deadly, hotter than Endeavor's flames. He matches Endeavor's snarl, his own in unimpressed eyes, and he feels all the fear and anxiety seeps out of his body. "I assure you, Endeavor, that I have no intention to stain your son, as you call it," he says. "Despite what your father may mean to this world, boy, be assured that I will not hesitate to do what necessary to keep my son's reputation and well-being." Shocking, coming from you of all people, thinks Izuku. And wait, is he getting shovel talk right now? "You do not deserve Shouto. You do not belong here, in this house, or with him." Izuku freezes. Something swells in his throat. His words get caught at the tip of his tongue. A very real, a very genuine, and a very strong emotion slips past him. Past the facade he's built for the weak. Past the stories he's made and the persona he's playing. Past his thoughts of endeavor, and past the massive brick wall he's desperately tried to build since the moment he tore down the one keeping Shouto's fire locked away. He can't recognize the emotion, can't distinguish exactly what it is yet. He can feel the realness and the meaning of it. He stares back at Endeavor. No, you're right. I don't deserve him. Good, you recognize it. I don't deserve him, but I will, says Izuku, determination in his eyes and any hint of civility gone. I don't deserve him now, but it's not about what I think. It's about Shouto. All of this is because I love him. It's a half-lie he's saying this for the sake of the charade. It's a half-lie that he thinks he doesn't deserve Shouto. It's a half-lie to himself. Despite what you think, I love him, and if he, not you, thinks I'm worth it, he will too. Endeavor goes still in front of him, fiery eyes burning into Izuku's mind and all through his memory. The man turns around with a fierce step and begins to walk away. He looms the door for a second and speaks with his back turned to Izuku. You'll never be worthy in my eyes. Your eyes are not the ones that decide our future, replies Izuku. Endeavor's shoulders tense. My greetings to your father, Midoriya. He leaves the door, slamming forcefully behind him. Izuku goes back to the dishes. By the time Izuku goes back to Shouto's room, the sky has already darkened and the sounds of the night fauna were making themselves known through Shouto's half-open window. Speaking of which, the boy sat in front of the said window, staring off into the distance with a thoughtful expression yet tactfully composed demeanor. Izuku took off his shoes slowly and carefully, setting them next to the bed in an orderly fashion and going to sit next to Shouto himself. Hey you, how's it going? I hope you didn't miss me too much while I was doing the dishes. Shouto turns to look at him, eyes lighting up and color seeping back to his face. He stares at Izuku for a second before his body relaxes. Hardly, replies Shouto with a hint of a teasing smile. How mean of you. Won't even miss your own boyfriend? He teases back. More than anything, it's because I was talking with my sister. Well, then I guess we both had interventions from your family, he says, starting to grab his clothes to change into nightwear. Natsuo talk to you? Asks Shouto, politely turning away and finding solace on his phone. Endeavor. Oh, comes the mutter. What did he say? Nothing I didn't expect from him. Did your sister say anything important? No. Well, there's that then. They fall back into silence as Izuku goes back to changing. Shouto stares intensely at his phone. A few minutes pass in their peaceful quiet before Shouto breaks the silence. Would you... he begins before cutting himself off suddenly. Yeah? Encourages Izuku. Would you want to accompany me to see my mother tomorrow? I'm not sure if you can see her yourself, but I'd want you to meet her. The air is thick with Shouto's anxieties before Izuku replies, smiling, That'd be great. I'd be honored for you to let me go with you. It's a plan then? Yeah. He doesn't say any more, doesn't ask for an explanation as to why Shouto would want to take him, doesn't pry as to why tomorrow of all days, but he trusts Shouto. Instead, he focuses on getting into bed and lulling himself to get some rest. Also, my sister might know. about us. Unfortunately, Izuku is too far gone to sleep to hear the last past. Shame. Chapter 5. Sunlit Days. She's never been particularly close with her siblings. Not since Toya passed. Not since Mum left. Whether that be because she was the only girl in a house full of men, or because she was the only responsible one, or because she was the only member of this dysfunctional family who has ever made an effort to attempt to fix it. It didn't matter. So no, she wasn't close with her siblings, much less with her father. That is the one thing that made the arrival of Izuku Midoriya so quizzical, so interesting, because she may not be close with her siblings, but she had learned, out of survival, to read them like a book. To read every micro-expression of every mannerism and every hint of emotion that any of them showed. She had learnt to tell their mood off by their footsteps, to find their problems off their fingers. It didn't make sense for Shouto to have a boyfriend, and yet Izuku Midoriya stands before her with a light in his eyes that she has never seen in anyone his age. Not like she has many people to compare him with. She's wiping at the kitchen table, her father and Midoriya himself caught in a conversation she can't hear in the kitchen, when Shouto approaches her with his signature silence. "Oh, Shouto, hello, shouldn't you be with Izuku?" He insists on washing the dishes, he says, sitting down on a nearby chair, and, as much as I would not want him to, he refuses to do otherwise. Shouto takes one of the rags in a cleaning bucket and begins to wipe down the other side of the table. Fumi breaks the silence suddenly. "He's sweet," she says. "Your boyfriend, that is. He's really nice." Shouto stops moving for a moment before he glances at the hallway to the kitchen. Yeah, he is. He didn't look it that much on the TV, you know? With the obstacle course and the battles, he just looked like someone who's very determined, but not necessarily kind. A string of tension hangs in the air. "Like father?" No, not like father," she says immediately. Like Toya." The tension thickens, and they fall silent again. "That doesn't tell me much, and you know it." Fumi's breath hitches as she mentally curses herself for bringing up the topic of their late brother. It's a bad habit of hers, trying to talk about him when she shouldn't bring him up, when there's no need to. He was just very passionate, is all. Just in a reckless way. He was always looking for a father's attention, but I don't think he was ever too happy. At least that's what I can remember about him. Not that it matters right now. The silence comes back and stretches on. "I worry about him sometimes," says Shouto absent-mindedly, folding the tablecloth. "About Toya?" "About Izuku." "It makes sense," agrees Fumi. "He is self-sacrificial, almost as if he thinks himself as a tool to use rather than as a person. I'm scared that one day he'll save everyone and no one will be there to save him." "And that's why you—" "Why I want to be there when he needs me." Shouto falls silent at that moment, as does she. Can I ask you something outside all of this?" "What do you mean by all of this?" Her brother's eyes widen for a second before they go back to their regular expression. "Never mind. Just, can I ask you something?" "Okay, sure." Why do you think it is that I worry so much about him?" What do you mean? I've never felt this before. Such a strong need to protect a specific person. I've always known I wanted to be a hero, that I wanted to help people. But I never felt this way for someone. This need to make sure they're safe at all times. Why? Oh, Shouto. Her brother looks up at her for a moment before his gaze turns back to his hands. He looks utterly out of place and confused, yet it warms something Fumi's heart. You're in love, she says, because it is really that simple. Love really is that simple, at least to a pair of siblings who have no good indicator of it. In love? He asks. His eyes are wide and wondrous, like he's seeing a sunset for the first time, like they looked back when he was a baby, like they looked the first time he saw fire from Toya's own hand. It's not something I'm very familiar with. I'm the wrong person to ask about this, she says in all honesty, but I imagine that's what love must be. Shouto looks like he wants to say something for a second, like there's an itch that he needs to get rid of, and that he can only get rid of if he talks to her. His hands twitch at his sides, the way they do when he has something to say, and his mouth opens slightly beginning to enunciate a word. His eyes spark with something, and his brows furrow somewhere between confusion, fear, and anxiety. But then, the moment is gone, and Shouto is back to his usual vacant self. His lips twitch into something that attempts to be a smile. Yeah, I guess that's what it is. Good night, sis. Fumi stares at him for a moment, emotions still on her lips and hand twitching at her side. She gives up on her attempt to get him to talk more, because she believes it, at least for a second, believes that this very well is Shouto's boyfriend. After all, she has never seen her brother look at someone with that much emotion in his eyes, nor has she ever seen anyone look at her brother with the amount of violent protectiveness that she can feel hangs just under Izuku's skin. She sees the way Shouto hangs around Izuku, the way he looks at the boy like he personally hung the sun, moon, stars, and the planets. It's magical to a degree. She sees the way Izuku interacts with Shouto, the way tension and anxiety linger in his shoulders until Shouto is next to him, the way he looks ready to jump for him at the moment's notice. It's very romantic, in her opinion, but then she starts noticing the little things. The way Izuku stutters out Shouto's name, the way there's always an inch of space between them, as if they can't bear the thought of being separated, yet neither can they possibly think of touching. She notices the way that Izuku seems nervous when stuttering out answers about their relationship, the way Shouto avoids speaking of their relationship at all. Something is off here. She can quite tell what it is. "Good night, Shouto," she says. She speaks up again when he's at the door, halfway out of the room. "Take care of him, okay? No matter what's going on." "Okay," he mutters absent-mindedly. Shouto sleeps like he's in the middle of waking up, Izuku realizes. It's late, very late, far later than he should be awake at, far later than would be healthy for anyone with his sleep and exercise schedule, or for anyone reasonable in all honesty. Regardless, he definitely should not be awake. He had woken up 15 minutes ago, the result of a nightmare about Shigaraki, an ever-plaguing evil, and a fear he is unfortunately so far unable to tone down. Sweat had stuck his hair to his forehead, blood rushing in his ears, and heartbeats so loud he swore it would wake up Shouto. And that was precisely what had made him remember where he is, who he's with, and what him being there meant. He rolls onto his right shoulder, facing Shouto and quietly observing him. He must look like a freak right now. What kind of person would watch over his friend while he sleeps and just think about him? Is this a weird thing to do? It's probably a weird thing to do. He can't say it doesn't calm him though. Shouto runs naturally with a weird temperature. Despite any thought you may have, he's always either too hot or too cold. Izuku considered asking him about it, but that would mean involving an uncomfortable conversation about what it means for him to have spent so long thinking about the way Shouto sleeps, to have generated genuine questions with legitimate concerns, and things he wants to know about him. All things considered, Izuku enjoys watching Shouto sleep sometimes. His face softens and his eyes barely twitch. When he's asleep, Shouto's troubles and problems and complicated family issues abandon his face and makes him look truly at peace. He doesn't smile when he's asleep, not the way Ochako or Kominari does, nor does he frown the way Kachan does, but rather his face looks utterly fragile, like new and paper-thin porcelain freshly out of the oven. Izuku has never touched Shouto, has never given into the urge to feel that porcelain skin with his own fingers, the urge to feel all the textures and feelings and temperatures that came with feeling Shouto, because that would be weird and creepy of him. Kachan is right on this one thing, so he doesn't reach out. He places a hand in between the two of them and lets it rest there, feeling the closeness of his hand to Shouto's exposed arm. But he doesn't dare to reach out because of all of this that he has with Shouto is fragile, and a hand is not worth reaching for. His mother's room is fairly cold, the way it has been every time he has ever sought to visit her. He and Izuku had travelled here about 30 minutes ago, after Izuku had stressed out for an additional hour not only about what they would look like to his mother, but also whether or not he would make a good impression on her. Shouto had reassured him that no matter what, Izuku was incapable of making bad impressions on anyone, and that his mother would be delighted to meet him no matter what the circumstance. Izuku had stressed out regardless, much to Shouto's dismay. It didn't matter much in the end, considering the fact that there had barely been enough time for Izuku to even think about changing a lot about himself. It was perfectly okay. Shouto liked Izuku better when he was himself after all. You're in love. He hasn't stopped thinking about what Fumi said last night. This whole thing about Shouto being in love. He's never been in love with anyone, not even those child crushes his classmates talk about. He doesn't think he is in love. He doesn't even know if he is in love. The brush of Izuku's hands against his broke him out of his thoughts, and he decided to postpone that line of thought for a further time. He doesn't care whether or not he's in love right now, only that Izuku and him are going somewhere, and he needs to be there alongside the green-haired boy. They arrive at the hospital very shortly, where Shouto left Izuku in the waiting room, which is how he finds himself where he is now, in his mother's room. It's gotten better talking to his mother, that is. He thinks that maybe making an effort to talk to her may have contributed to them being a little better. Still, she has all of the softness in her eyes that he's come to see her develop, yet still carries the pain that the years have left the two of them. As he said, it's getting better, but they're not without flaws. Shouto, oh my Shouto! His mother begins, reaching out towards him with her yarn-wrapped hands. "Hi, Mum," he says. His mother looks him over and runs her fingers across his cheekbones. "Every week you seem to get taller, my love." Shouto smiles at her and brings her in for a hug. Her delicate frame against his broad shoulders and lean muscles create an indescribable contrast that he treasures. "It's lovely to see you, Shouto." "You too, Mother." They sit, his mother on her bedspread and him on her little side chair by the desk. It's quiet, their conversation as he updates her on things that have been going on in his life, about his classes and his activities and his extracurriculars. And it's nice, all of this, being able to talk to his mother and being able to directly interact with her. But then he remembers he's not the only one here. He didn't come here alone. He doesn't have to be alone. "Mum, I have something to ask you," he says. His mother pauses what she's saying and instead just stares at him. Her eyes soften and her expression relaxes into something Shouto can only describe as curiosity and concern. "That's okay, honey. I'll answer the best I can." And Shouto knows what he's gonna say. It's very simple. He just has to ask if she would like to meet Izuku, if she would like to meet the boy who saved him, if she would like to meet the boy who has stood up with him against and for him. One of the only people who Shouto has ever wanted to get to know, to interest himself in. But then the words are spilling out of his mouth, and he doesn't know why he's saying it, and his mind is going too fast, and the sentence is past his lips before he can realize what he's saying. "How do I know if I'm in love?" His mother looks at him for a second before she folds her hands to her lap and tilts her head in question. "That's an odd question, Shouto. You've never even asked anything like this. Did something happen?" And Shouto, despite all his training, despite having been created to be painless and fearless, despite having been made to be void of any emotion, he can't possibly bring himself to tell the truth. To tell his mother about the boy on the other side of the door, whose average courage and worth make Shouto's look like that of an aloof cat. "It's not important," he says, because that's all that his aloof cat heart will allow him to say. "I just need to know." His mother's face turns pensive and in deep consideration of Shouto's request. Of all she's just been told, she hums thoughtfully and drums her fingers on the book by her side. Some small and mostly insignificant thing she likes to read whenever she has nothing to do. Evidently her favorite. "In love," she begins. "That's a funny word, isn't it?" "Is it?" asks Shouto. "To love someone is a very difficult thing to explain," she says, pausing her speech and looking Shouto in the eye. "I'm not sure if I have the answers you're looking for, Shouto. Because I never really loved Denji." "No?" "No," she says quietly, closing her eyelids softly. "But I did love 3 other boys." "3?" he says, surprised. "And a girl," says his mother. She smiles with all the softness only a mother could have. "My children." Shouto stares at his mother with intensity. He hasn't quite yet stomached it, the concept of being loved by his mother, by anyone for that matter. "I can't tell you what it means to love, not romantically, but I can tell you what it feels like to love someone." She pulls the book she's holding closer to her and runs the back of her hand across its cover. "It's a finicky thing. A bit of a contradiction, if you will," she says. "Sometimes it's so fragile you feel yourself slip away from them, and it feels like there's a void between you that will never be even close to being bridged. Sometimes it's so strong you're overwhelmed with the urge to reach out to them and never let go,
to hold onto them and protect them from everything you fear or everything they fear. It's there for you when you need it. Love. When you feel like you're stuck in between a rock and a hard place, it's there for you. When you feel like you're breaking apart and you consider if this is all worth it. When you lose yourself and don't know who you are, it's there for you. It seems absolutely pointless sometimes, like all this effort you're putting will be worth anything in the end. But then you see their smile and you hear their laugh and they look at you like you're everything in the world to them. And you think that maybe, just maybe, it will all be okay. That maybe in the end, when it comes down to the two of you, that every ounce of love that you have ever felt for them will let you go back to them. Shouto's mother finishes with her eyes locked onto his face, gazing at him through the warmth in her eyes and anything in between them that might still be left over. All that matters is that you love who you want to, that you love who you can have by your side when it matters. Shouto stares at her, at his mother who she is the spitting image of, his mother who despite everything that has happened still loves him with all her heart, his mother who has yet to meet the person who will be at his side when it matters. And that brings him back to Izuku. Everything always seems to bring him back to Izuku, to the boy he can't ever seem to forget or stop thinking about, the boy who has stuck around despite Shouto having been everything from a jealous rival to a lovesick puppy to him. Izuku, who came to his mind when he had to think about who would be his boyfriend. Izuku, who makes him get butterflies whenever he stands too close to Shouto, who makes his heart race and his temperature spike. Shouto thinks back to everything his mother has just said about love, about what it means to love, about how maybe this intense feeling of protectiveness and this feeling of being able to fully trust him has an explanation, about how this is what it means to love. Oh, am I in love with him?
Chapter 6. Sparks. Let's get this out of the way before you get any ideas. Katsuki Bakugo does not do friends, and even less does he do crushes. If he happens to go to the mall at the same time as the group of idiots that call themselves his friends, and just so happens to run into them, that's a complete coincidence. He just wanted to go to the mall today to look at t-shirts, no other reasons. If his phone happens to have a message with a personal invitation from Kirishima, that's absolutely irrelevant, and he is incredibly offended that he would even think that would affect his desire to go look at t-shirts. Fuck off. That being said, you'd have to be a different kind of idiot to not figure out he is at the mall currently. At least that's his opinion, and he's never been wrong about anything since he was 4, and he ate that weirdly shaped rock thinking it would taste different from the other rocks. Wait, he's getting off track here. Point is, he's at the mall, yada yada, and he's looking at the t-shirts in front of him, the color and the texture, maintaining his concentration regardless of a certain redhead on the other side of the area looking at tank tops and the like. He sneaks the glance up and his eyes meet emerald ones. He tries his best to tuck his head and pretend he's looking at other stuff, but alas, it is too late, for he has already been sworn to his fate of being subjected to a Nerd a Ton 2000. Kachan! Cheers the green-haired boy in front of him. Deku! Growls Katsuki dismissively. I didn't know you were here. Did you come to shop with the others? He says, pointing at Kirishima. Katsuki turns bright red and quickly smacks Deku's hands down. What the fuck? He says through teeth,
gripping Deku's hand so hard the green-haired boy starts to flex his fingers. "No, I didn't. I would never fucking do that." Deku smiles, one of his shit-eating grins no one but Katsuki ever gets to see. Katsuki has a theory that he does it on purpose, and only whenever no one else is watching, just to spite him. "I didn't know you shopped here," he grins. "Don't you usually go to the mall across the city?" "Yeah, well, I wanted to come here today. Fuck off." Deku grins at him again and starts to dart his eyes around the store. His eyes lock onto a head of red hair before he turns towards Katsuki again. "Oh, I see what's going on here. Shut your whore mouth. Don't you say a thing." He pushes through his teeth. Katsuki grabs his wrist before this conversation can get any further along and drags him out of the store. The blonde starts walking down the walkway of the mall before Deku rushes to his side and starts to skip along with him. "So, what is this about? You coming to this mall? Nothing that concerns you. Piss off." No, there has to be some reason for you being here, and I have a feeling that it starts with G and ends with owing with Kirishima." Katsuki turns bright red and sputters. "What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not dating Shitting. Yeah, that sounds like the exact kind of thing someone who is dating Kirishima would say. Katsuki speeds up and bumps his shoulder against Deku's. "Oh, hop off my dick. What's a loser like you doing here anyways? I thought you'd be rotting at home since Auntie Ingo's on that trip." A beat of silence. "How did you know that?" More silence. "Kachan, how do you know my mum is on a trip?" "The old hag mentioned it, okay? It's not like I was purposely listening in or anything," yells Katsuki, because he absolutely was not trying to see what Deku was up to over the break. Sure, depends Deku. "Fuck off! What are you even—" he begins before something catches his eyes and he cuts himself off. "What is that thing on your—" At that moment, Katsuki sees something hanging off the nerd's backpack. It's a heart-shaped charm. A dual-toned heart-shaped charm. A red and white dual-toned heart-shaped charm. His eyes immediately lock onto it, Deku following his gaze to the keychain and immediately turning it away, covering it with one of his hands as his face turns redder than Katsuki. "You gotta be shitting me." A beat passes before Katsuki starts to physically fume. "Wait, no, Kachan, it's not what you think," he starts, waving his hands in front of his face, backing away and trying to get an approaching Katsuki to back off. "Oh, you goddamn fucking hypocrite! Wait, no, Kachan, please! Were you planning or telling me you were here on a date with half and half? Or were you just planning on looking down on me the whole time, huh?" "No, wait, Kachan, I'm not here on a date with Shouto." "Shouto? What the fuck?" "Oh god, I'm just making this worse," Deku mutters, looking absolutely devastated. Deku sputters for a little more before he shakes his head rapidly. "Okay, look, there's something I have to tell you, and about this whole thing." No, says Katsuki. "What the fuck is this with half and half? You're explaining that first." Deku rubs his eyes for a moment before he looks at the ceiling with a frustrated face. "I promise you it'll make sense. Just come with me, please. I'm buying you something to drink. Just please let me tell you this one thing." "Why the fuck would I ever do that?" responds Katsuki, admittedly still curious, but willing to let it go if his honor is intact. "Because if you don't, I'll tell your mum about the time in 4th grade you burnt the couch and blamed it on Dad." "You motherfucker, you wouldn't," he says, glaring at Deku. You wouldn't dare. Oh, but I would, Kachan. I would. They stare at each other for a beat before Katsuki gives in. Fucking fine. I'm sure it's something boring as fuck anyways. Great. Cheers, Deku. How does boba sound? And off they go. You fucking dumbass. They're sitting on the roof of one of the store buildings, legs hanging off the edge, boba cups next to either side of them, and a bag of snacks in between the two of them. It's been peaceful so far. They've gotten food and had sat down, even managing to have an insultless, peaceful, friendly 2-minute conversation before Kachan had started yelling about how Izuku had brought them up here to not even tell him anything. As a result, Izuku ended up spilling everything that had happened, from Shouto asking Izuku to be his fake boyfriend all the way to meeting his mum. And yeah, admittedly, he shouldn't have told Kachan about it, since it's supposed to be a secret between Shouto and Izuku, and also because his stomach feels fuzzy when he talks about Shouto for too long and his face starts to get all blushy. But, being honest, he's never been particularly good at keeping secrets from Kachan. See, One for All, or even keeping anything from Kachan. See, UA Application. And also, he fully trusts Kachan to not say anything about his situation, not out of respect for Izuku's privacy, but rather out of a complete and utter apathy at anything Izuku does. Ah yes, the wonders of having a childhood friend. What? Why are you yelling at me? Responds Izuku. What did I do? Fucking hell, what part of pretending to be a boyfriend of your crush who likes you back sounds like a good idea to you? Wait, what? Both of them freeze as Katsuki turns to Izuku. Half and half, your crush who likes you back. Are you fucking stupid? What? I don't have a crush on Shouto. But does he? Oh my god, you genuinely don't know? I don't know what, because he's feeling very confused, yet can feel something start to stir in his gut. Are you telling me that you actually don't realize that you have a crush on Half and Half? I don't have a crush on him. We're just friends. I'm lucky he even considers me a friend. Kachan stays silent for a moment. Really? Even though you're eyeing every moment he crosses your line of sight? He's objectively attractive, nothing more. Kachan is quiet at his side as he raises his eyebrows and traces patterns on the concrete of the roof they're sitting on. The sun is starting to go down in the horizon, and the shadows of the building start to cast darkness around them. I really would have thought you had a crush on him. Well, I don't, says Izuku, because he refuses to allow himself any further thought on the matter. But his mind is already too far gone to possibly realize that this is not a rabbit hole he should be exploring. This is not something he should be genuinely considering. He's just, well, it wouldn't be anything special. Anyone would have a crush on him, you know? I don't, quips Kachan. How can you not? He's sweet and caring. He's smart. He worries about others. He's so genuinely curious and so incredibly kind. He's one of the only people I know that can actually see the best in people when it matters. He's been through a lot. He's just told me the basics, and still, every day, he gets out there and still keeps on going, and he inspires others. He's always so confident and cool and like he knows how the world works. He is so very nice to his mother, the sweet woman. Despite everything, he still looks at her the way anyone would look at their caring mother. He fully trusts her and forgives her and believes in her. He laughs like he's never laughed before, like he's trying to
like he's trying out the sounds and testing what feels right. Like it's the first time he's heard his own voice and it's the first time he's felt this happy. He smiles like you would smile on a summer day or a rainy autumn afternoon. It's cozy, comfortable expression that soothes your nerves immediately. He's so strong and so reliable. He's someone you can count on when you don't know what to do, and you feel like the world is falling apart on you. Somehow, whenever he says anything, for a moment, everything seems like it will be okay. He's everything to a lot of people. He's everything to me. Kachan stares at Izuku for what feels like the longest time as gears start to click inside Izuku's mind. Like a curtain is being lifted to reveal someone that's been there forever, but that he has never been able to see. Something he's tried ignoring. He stares at the sunset as the realization clicks. Oh my god, I'm in love with him, he says, terrified. Kachan is grinning at him with an vaguely evil expression and sparks in his eyes. There you go. Izuku stands up suddenly. Oh fuck, oh god, fuck, shit. This is terrible. This is absolutely fucking terrible. Oh god, he can't have a crush on Shouto Todoroki. He can't. No, this can't be. Fuck. He starts to pace around the rooftop, food and drink abandoned, next to Kachan as he tangles his hand in his hair and holds his head. Kachan turns towards him. Wait, why the fuck do you look so fucking miserable? Izuku feels like crying. He wants to start crying. Oh fuck, oh god, this can't be happening. He can't do this, no. Kachan, I can't do this. I can't have a crush on Shouto, he says. A tear starts making its way out of his eyes, rolling down his cheeks as he stands there. This is terrible. No, I can't do this. What? Asks Kachan in confusion. Why the fuck not? Izuku starts to take slow breaths. The tears stop, and he finds himself looking at the horizon. He manages to get his breathing down to where he can go back to sitting next to Kachan on the edge. He grips the concrete, fingers scratching roughly as his knuckles start to hurt a bit. He traces shapes on the grey roof as he starts talking. I just can't. Have you ever seen Shouto? He's just so amazing. He's everything everyone has ever wanted. He's the son of one of the most powerful heroes out there. He looks like he jumped straight out of a fashion magazine or a TV show. He's everything, and I'm nothing. I'm just me, just Deku. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Kachan doesn't get it. He doesn't get what it means to lose someone. He doesn't get what it means to be so different from someone to where the mere idea of them talking to you is a quiet, hidden, sought-out fantasy. He doesn't get what it means to not have it all. This thing we have, me and Shouto, it's fragile. We're not meant to be together. We're not even meant to get along. I try to keep myself normal enough to where he won't hate me. He ignores it when I'm weird. I can't go around ruining something like this. Kachan is still dutifully keeping quiet, sipping his boba and staring at the sunset. This is such a me thing to do, to develop crushes on my friends. He stays quiet and Kachan looks at him. That doesn't sound like you at all, actually. Yeah, 'cause I never told you. I used to be you, you know, back when we were really little. Kachan chokes on his drink for a second. It's gone now, dead and buried, don't worry. When we were little and I didn't know what it meant, I had a huge crush on you. Kachan barks at a laugh. Is that why you're so annoying all the time? In parts, laughs Izuku, and then you stopped talking to me, and I figured it must have been something I did. They both fall silent. The air whips around them and Izuku's hair tangles further. "I guess it's partly my fault," says Kachan, "that this is happening." "You were not my bioawakening, Kachan." Izuku rolls his eyes. "That title goes to that one male hero calendar my mum brought when we were 9. "That's not what I mean, dumbass," says Kachan, "but I know exactly which calendar you're talking about." They laugh. "I mean the fact that you think Half and Half is gonna hate you, or that he's so much better than you. It's my fault that you think of yourself so low. But now this, if I had to pick a rival between you and Half and Half, it would be you. No questions asked. Because you are the only one who can match my abilities. So if you think Half and Half is better than you, then you're wrong." Some more silence. Izuku smiles as his eyes fill with tears. "Oh, Kachan," he begins, voice breaking and emotions overwhelming him. "That's the sweetest thing you've ever said to me." "Fuck no, that wasn't sweet or nice, it was a threat. I'm gonna surpass you," yells Kachan. Izuku wraps an arm around Kachan's shoulder as the other boy tries to push him away. "I love you too," smiles Izuku. "Fuck off." By the time they get back, Katsuki is holding the bag of snacks as Deku holds their drinks. Katsuki walks alongside Deku, who has now started talking about some new upcoming hero Katsuki could not fucking care less about. They're back to their normal, for the most part. Deku has finally stopped muttering about how he's absolutely doomed for having the hots for Half and Half, and Katsuki has gone back to yelling at him for being a fucking idiot. It works out for them, they enjoy it. It's nothing new, it's still more of the same, just how Katsuki likes it. They go back to the store they had initially met at, under the guise that Katsuki was actually looking at the clothing and wanted to see more of it. Of course, his want to return to that store had nothing to do with certain people being in the surrounding area, or a certain person having been at that store when Katsuki had been in there. Deku hadn't mentioned anything of the sort anyways. The shirts at the store are not particularly good, nor are they of particular quality, but they are just the shitty type that he likes, with a cold, loose texture that didn't make his skin crawl and his mood immediately slump. They look through more of the shirts in comfortable silence before Katsuki breaks it. "Just so your dumbass knows, if he fucking does anything to you, I will murder him." Deku starts to tear up again like an idiot. "Kachan, that's so sweet." "Again, that's supposed to be a threat." "Doesn't matter," smiles Deku. "It's still quite nice of you to do that for me, although it will hardly be necessary." "You really think so?" "I do," says Izuku. "Shouto, I don't think he's the type of person to be like that. To lead me on and hurt me. He wouldn't do that to me." "I don't care if you think he wouldn't. If he does anything to you, I will kill him. He can't go around looking down on me by hindering my competition." "Oh, hindering. What a smart word." "You know what I mean, you major asshole." They both laugh. I'll be okay, Kachan. It's not like I'm gonna do anything about it anyways." "What?" "Well, just because I like him doesn't mean he feels anything for me. It's safer this way. If I keep quiet about it." Katsuki stares at him with absolute exasperation, because how is someone so emotionally intelligent so utterly idiotic? Besides, it's not like any of this is gonna matter when he gets back. Chapter 7 Moonlight Sonata. Shouto hadn't seen Izuku since they'd been separated at the mall. Admittedly, he wasn't a fan of malls, or of being alone for that matter. He wandered vaguely around the mall for a bit, pretending to look at things and doing what his classmates call window shopping. He's fairly unfamiliar with the concept. He doesn't see Izuku until about 3 hours later, when he's sitting at one of the communal tables in the middle of the mall. He's bored and lonely, a combination that's never gone well with Shouto. But the prospect of using his brain to reflect on the chat with his mother would imply trying to comprehend and make sense of the mess of feelings his heart has unlocked towards Izuku, which he is not eager to do. Said feelings make themselves present when Shouto sees Izuku walking side by side with Bakugo, smile on his face and a breathless blush on his cheeks, laughing about something as Bakugo himself grumbles, yet the corner of his mouth lifts in betrayal of his supposedly annoyed mood. Something painfully twists inside of Shouto when he sees the scene, which is odd considering Shouto has seen this before, has seen them laugh side by side, and has seen them operate in an almost single-minded way, in perfect sync and well acquainted with each other. He's had enough deep and complicated feelings for one day though, which is how he decides to ignore trying to comprehend the feeling and instead lets his body move on his own, dragging him in between the two of them and quickly taking the bag in Izuku's hand, fingers brushing the warm skin on the back of Izuku's hand in the process. "Here," he says, not even realizing he started speaking. "Let me get that for you." "Oh no, Shouto, you don't have to do that. I can carry it myself." Izuku starts, waving his hands and reaching for the bag, which Shouto just pulls away from him. No, I insist. He says, "I've already done enough damage to your hands. I should at least help where I can." That did not make any sense in this context, but it does get Izuku to start to stretch and ball up his fingers, a motion that Shouto now realizes he finds incredibly captivating, dare you say attractive. "Shouto, you didn't have to." "No, really, you've been carrying this all day. Just let me." Izuku starts to protest, but before Shouto can say anything, Bakugo interjects. The emotion twists in Shouto's gut again. "Just let him do it, nerd. He clearly wants to." Izuku's face seems to redden, and suddenly Shouto is really liking the idea of leaving Bakugo and going home. He finally addresses the blonde. "Bakugo, I didn't expect you to be here." Bakugo scoffs and tilts his head upwards, mouth twisting into something close to a scowl. "Half and half. I didn't know you could shop at the mall like us commoners." "I'm not shopping," says Shouto, choosing not to mention how Bakugo's parents owns a fashion line. "I'm here for Izuku. He wants to be here, so I came here." "So, you do what the nerd tells you to do," says Bakugo in something that resembles a teasing voice, but is ineffective on Shouto, who does not give two shits about what Bakugo's opinion is on him. "If he so wants me to." That seems to take Bakugo by surprise, for he backs up a few steps and stares at him with wide eyes. His eyes dart to Izuku before he scoffs and turns around to walk away from them. "Right," he says. "I'll see you later, nerd." He walks away and Shouto is left with nothing but himself, Izuku, and what he'd brought. "Sorry I didn't tell you I was with Kachan," says Izuku. Shouto just shrugs at him. "It's okay, you didn't have to. It's not like I can say who you can and can't be with." Izuku smiles at him before he pulls out his phone and his eyes widen. "Oh, it's so late already. Do you want to go back to your house?" "We could. Is that what you want to do?" "If you don't mind." He smiles. Shouto nods along and starts to walk towards the exit. In a bold move, he reaches out for Izuku's hand when they stand side by side. Izuku jumps at the touch, but eventually laces his fingers with Shouto's, blushed cheeks on his face. The train ride back to Shouto's house is spent in comfortable silence for the most part, with Izuku lightly leaning on Shouto and Shouto subconsciously warming up their area. He looks over to Izuku, whose expression remains relaxed as they go on the train. Shouto's emotions seems to be overtaking him, his mind flooded with love confessions and dramatic declarations of infatuation. He idly wonders what would happen if he was to tell Izuku about the inner battle he's been having. If he was to express every ounce of undying, fiery emotion that his heart houses and that he can't possibly make sense of. He wonders what Izuku would say, if he would understand the emotions within Shouto, or if he would be just as confused about them as he is. When they get back to Shouto's house, they are greeted by the smiling face of his siblings. There is a tension on their shoulders, as there always is, but they seem to be more relaxed than a usual day would have them. Shouto walks in, still holding Izuku's bag, heading to his room and having the green-haired boy collapse on his large bed, facing his ceiling fan and closing his eyes in a way that has Shouto staring at him with indefinite admiration, until he spots the boy starting to flutter his eyelids back open as he moves to sit up. "I had a great time today, Shouto." He smiles. Shouto is still far too hung up on the way Izuku pronounces his name to really pay attention. "I'm glad," says Shouto. "Did you want to do anything else today? We have the rest of the night to ourselves for the most part." Izuku seems to think about it for a few seconds, before smiling back at him. "I was wanting to maybe go on a run, or just do a quick routine outside. I feel like I've been slacking off these few days, and I don't want to get out of shape." Shouto spends a fraction of a second thinking about Izuku's God-sculpted abs and bicep before he remembers the subject of such abs and biceps is standing in front of him and most likely staring at him like he's crazy. "You can do that if you want," says Shouto. "Do you want to do that now or later? I can call you for dinner if you want." "I can go now," says Izuku. "And yeah, that'd be lovely if you called me in." As Izuku starts to change into what Shouto assumes are his workout clothes, Shouto decides to leave the room. Considering how close they've had to get to each other in the past 4 days, and despite the fact that Shouto would be glad to stay and stare at Izuku for the rest of the night, and maybe, just maybe, the rest of their lives, he knows that this is his subtle hint that he should get going, which is fine. He walks into their kitchen, getting himself a glass of ice-cold water as he hears the back door open and close with the sure steps of his friend. How lovely is it to hear someone else's step and not be overcome with the worst of his anxieties and doubts about what the future holds for his life. In any case, he returns to the living room a few minutes later, hand on his phone and scrolling through the only social media app on his phone. Personal request of his classmate and not approved by his father. Sometime after this, his brother and sister both sit in the parallel couches that their living room has. A strange arrangement, considering they can barely stand to sit still when their father is not supervising them. Nevertheless, Shouto goes to sit in the small love seat adjacent to the large screen TV. "I like him," says his sister. "He seems like a lovely boy." "So you've said," replies Shouto. "Although," begins Natsuo, and Shouto is fully ready to defend Izuku at the exact same moment. "He seems very, how do I put this, lonely." "Lonely?" asks Shouto, because he's never thought of Izuku as a lonely person. If anything, he's the most social person that Shouto knows. Although, it's not like Shouto knows a lot of people who serve a good reference to what a not lonely person looks like. "Yeah," continues brother, "he just seems to always be in a rush, but never for himself, you know." "No, I don't know," answers Shouto, because he truly doesn't know where Natsuo seems to be going with this. "I just don't remember the last time I saw this kid do something out of his own interest or anything like that. And he always seems to be on the move, almost like he is trying to reach something that seems unattainable." Shouto looks out the window, finding his eyes facing Izuku's beautiful green curls, shielding his face from Shoto's view and sticking to his sweaty forehead as he jumps around, viridian lightning surrounding him and slowly but surely tiring him out. I'm just rambling at this point," says Natsuo. "Maybe I'm just jealous of you." Shouto stays silent, pointedly still staring at Izuku. He hasn't really stopped to think about it, though Izuku seems to be always willing to help those around him, without asking for anything back. Shouto had always tried to give back, but it's not until now that he realizes it is never something Izuku had ever mentioned or even brought up, the idea of deserving back. All that matters is that you love who you want, that you love who you can have by your side when it matters. Has Shouto been at Izuku's side when it matters? He likes to think so, considering the amount of time they've been caught in situations where being in sync and relying on each other is a matter of life and death. But what about in their normal days? Has he done enough? He focuses back on Izuku, who is now taking to practice some kind of martial art in their courtyard. Izuku's always been the more selfless of the two. Shouto has seen him run himself to the ground, doing all sorts of things for people in all sorts of ways. It borders on concerning at times, if he's to be fully honest. He tries to express it before, to tell Izuku about this habit of his, to surrender everything and anything about himself to others is dangerous for him. Has spent far more than enough time bandaging wrists and brushing filth out of curly green hair, and covering up for them when he simply falls asleep mid-class, and Shouto pretends to be talking with him, but doesn't make it any less worrying. "I should check on him, bring him back in." "Oh," says Natsuo, "you don't have to do that. Sorry for interfering in your relationship." "No, you're right," says Shouto. He is pretty lonely. Maybe I want to be the only one he's not lonely with. Is that selfish?" "No, I wouldn't say so," cuts in Fuyumi. "If anything, it's the opposite of selfish. I think it's sweet you want to keep him company." "I agree," says Natsuo. "Not like we'd know much about company anyways," absent-mindedly mutters Shouto. The three of them fall silent. You actually like Izuku, right? You're not doing this just despite Dad. Shouto's stomach twists in anger. Date Izuku despite Endeavor? What kind of heartless, manipulative monster would do that? Why would Natsu even insinuate that? Their relationship is fully... You understand what I'm trying to do? Truly? You sure it's not just because you want to tell your dad that you're dating All Might's son? Genuine. I like to think of all of that as an added plus. Except it isn't. None of this is. None of their relationship is. Because they're not dating. The only reason Izuku is even here is because of yet another self-sacrificial act on Izuku's part. Fuck. Shouto stays silent for a second as he tries to think about what to say to his brother, his thoughts muddled with those he had during the conversation with his mother. No, I'm not dating him because of that. I actually love him. And it feels amazing to finally say it out loud, to admit to himself that maybe that enormous gap between what he and Izuku are and what Shouto wants them to be can be closed one step at a time. To finally admit to himself the desire he denies himself all this time, since the day Izuku set his heart ablaze. It's intoxicating, the amount of joy it brings him to say it out loud. I love Izuku. I love him. His siblings glance at each other with something that borders on being uncomfortable, but Shouto is already too far gone at the glass door separating the living room from the area where Izuku is. He's already too far out there, and he's already reaching to cool the air where Izuku has been avidly training for the past hour maybe. Izuku shakingly halts his movement as his wide green eyes looks up at Shouto's with confusion. Shouto, oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't see... Sorry, didn't you want to tell me about dinner? Or did you need something else? Shouto grabs Izuku's drying towel and starts to silently walk towards where he is now standing. He folds it in between his hands and runs his fingers across its edge. Izuku's face scrunches when Shouto is face to face and reaches his hands towards him. He runs the edge of the towel along Izuku's brow, delicately wiping the sweat along his and loosely running a hand up and into his green hair. He uses the towel to keep on softly wiping Izuku's face, paying attention to each of his features, getting so close to his face he can feel them breathing the same air. He pulls the towel away from Izuku's face and rather presses their foreheads together, one hand coming up to cup along Izuku's cheek, rubbing his thumb in circles as Izuku leans into the intimacy of the touch. I think you've exerted yourself enough for one day. Izuku hums, the rumble of his throat running along his face and into Shouto's. How about we do something else together? Asked Shouto. Yeah? Like what? I don't know. Maybe we can cook together? Shouto whispers. Yeah, I don't think that's a great idea, considering both our histories with it. Yeah, I suppose that's right. Shouto begins to look around until his eyes land on one of the speakers in the Todoroki's courtyard. How about a dance? A dance? Startles Izuku, pulling away from Shouto's forehead, much to Shouto's disappointment. Shouto takes out his phone, connects it to the speaker. He picks a song, something soft and slow, for the two of them. The music begins to play around them. Yes, a dance, he says. His arms hooks around Izuku's waist, pulling him close and interlacing their remaining hands together. Have you ever danced with someone? I can't say I have, says Izuku. I have 2 left feet. Shouto smiles back at him. Then it's good I have 2 right ones. Izuku smiles. Just follow along with me, says Shouto. Try to feel the music. He was taught this dance a very, very long time ago. Only once. For a gala he had to attend with his father, where he was expected to know how to move. Despite that, now, when it matters, the memory of it comes back to him easily, turning and swaying with the music as Izuku's bright smile lights up everything. It's messy, it's clumsy, it's everything Izuku is, and Shouto feels the emotion swell within his chest. Oh, he's very, very badly in love. I never took you for someone who really is into music and dancing, says Izuku. I usually am not, says Shouto, but I can do it when it matters. Is now one of those times? Asks Izuku playfully. With you, always. They fall back into silence as Shouto feels Izuku melt into the embrace. After dinner, Shouto leads Izuku back to their room, going through a routine they've established. When Shouto comes back into their room, Izuku is already in their bed. The covers are pulled up all the way to his nose, and he can see him bundled up, looking at his phone closely. You'll hurt your sight if you look at your phone that closely. Izuku startles and drops the phone into the covers before he regains awareness of the situation. Oh, Shouto, you scared me. He laughs. Do you want me to turn off the light now? If that's okay with you. Of course it is. So, they turn off the light. Moments later, he sees Izuku's turn to face him. I just want to say that I've had a great time so far. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being willing to put up with my family, smiles Shouto. For you, always. Silence floods the room. Izuku turns around. Shouto stares at Izuku's back again, just like he did the first night, and just like he has done before. He could reach out right now. He could touch the velvety skin covered by the white fabric of Izuku's nightshirt. He could trace every muscle, every scar, every inch of the freckled skin that there is, even if it's kept from him, even if that skin is his very own tree of knowledge, and the warmth from his skin is a serpent urging him to bite the apple. He wants to. He so wants to. Does Izuku realize, thinks Shouto, what he means to him? Does you notice the way he can't seem to ever pull his mind away from the emerald curls and the viridian eyes, and the sun-kissed skin, and the specks of brown on him? Does Izuku realize the way he's plagued Shouto's mind? Izuku's deep breaths fill the room as he starts to truly, fully fall asleep. One of his hands twitches. Maybe, someday, he'll reach for the fruit. He sleeps. Chapter 8. Burning Passion. On most days, Izuku doesn't mind surprises. This is in direct contradiction to his affinity for normal days. He realizes that the intricacies of normal days are more complicated than he could possibly hope to describe in the time allotted, so he'll just leave it at that. He doesn't mind surprises, despite his love for normal days. Those surprises don't usually involve his fake boyfriend's father, however. They're sitting at the kitchen table, quiet breakfast between them, and the TV lolling in the background, when he hears the telltale ting of Shouto's front door ringer going off, which is certainly very strange, considering Shouto had not mentioned inviting or having any guests over anytime soon. He watches as Shouto stands up from where he's seated, eyes a little startled, and white t-shirt weighing down on his shoulders. The two-toned boy walks away from where the two were sitting. He watches him peek through the peephole on their front door, before he frowns deeply and releases what can only be described as an annoyed huff. Izuku goes to sit next to Shouto by the time he sits back down and starts to run his hand up and down his arms. "Is everything okay?" Shouto nods before going back to his breakfast, reaching up to mess his curls around. "Yeah, just my dad is at the door and..." Izuku freezes. "What?" He's outside, doesn't look too happy. "Oh, won't he come in anyways?" "Yes, I will," comes the voice behind them. Izuku goes to step away from Shouto at the last second before his arm is firmly grabbed by him, pulling him back to where he was, shoulder to thigh with Shouto, hand on shoulder. Shouto, no, if he has a problem, he can leave. An awkward silence settles over them as Endeavor glares at Shouto once more. "You insolent child, you won't even answer the door for your father." Maybe if my father didn't call me an insolent child at every opportunity he has, I would answer the door for him. He glares. "Shouto, please," tries Izuku. And what is he still doing here? I would have thought he'd be gone by now, that you'd see the reason in what I'm saying, growled Endeavor. "Shut up, old man. Izuku has treated me better in the past week than you ever did in the first 15 years of my life. Why you..." Endeavor's beard flares up in anger, just as Shouto's right side begins to freeze over, and Izuku barely has half the mind to move in between the two of them before the situation worsens. Maybe we should all calm down?" "Stay out of this," says Endeavor. "Izuku, go back to your room," says Shouto at the same time. No, to both of you. I'm sorry if I can't get along on most days, but I think we got off on the wrong foot. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I know who you are. You're All Might's son. Izuku deflates in exasperation. "I'm actually not..." "I can't believe this," says Shouto. "You're bringing up your weird All Might thing into my relationship? You'll find nothing good in anyone related to that man," gritted Endeavor. Shouto's left side warms up against Izuku's thigh in what he has learned to recognize as pure, unfiltrated anger. Izuku sneaks a hand up to the nape of his neck and rubs small circles into the short hair there. He feels all the energy dissipate from Shouto and gives a sigh of his own. "Why are you here?" asks Shouto. "I was going to bring you to the agency just for office work. The school tells me you are not allowed to do any patrolling or hero work, but I find that a stupid restriction. You should still be getting work done over the break." Izuku and Shouto stare at each other. Izuku hopes his eyes don't sparkle too much at the prospect of going to a hero agency. "Okay, I'll go with you, says Shouto, if and only if I'm allowed to bring Izuku along. What? I can't possibly allow that. You're gonna have to if you have any hope of me going with you to the agency. The two of them stare at each other with an intensity only two fire wielders of the same blood could have. An intensity Izuku could never imagine with his own father. After what feels like an eternity of staring and quiet fighting, he sees Endeavor's shoulder rise and fall. Fine, but he mustn't touch anything. Shouto raises both eyebrows and sneers in victory. We'll go then. Okay, I'll wait for you in my car, says Endeavor. No need, we'll take the train. You will not. I assure you, we will. So, they do. The Endeavor Agency is as minimalist and as modern as Izuku expected, with its sleek black floors and its silver metal walls. It's expected of a pro hero like him, of course, someone who has built his reputation upon being absolutely steadfast and a pillar of stoicness. He supposes that's what comes with fame. They walk into the agency, Shouto's hands in his pocket, and Izuku shyly trailing behind him. He sticks close to Shouto, close enough to feel the odd heat that radiates from Shouto's body, and close enough to feel the energy that seems to pull him toward him. They walk together along the quiet halls of the agency until they get to what seems like a conference room. Shouto opens the door to the room and leads himself and Izuku into it. Izuku stands at the door as Shouto sits on the round table. So, starts Shouto, do you like it? Like it? The agency, he says. Thought you might like it. Izuku looks around in an attempt to form a different opinion on the agency. It's, interesting, he settles for. Very much like Endeavor, I'm afraid. Shouto smiles at him and hiccups something of a laugh. Yeah, that's a way to put it, he says. Do you like it though? Yeah, answers Izuku without hesitation. It's the first and only hero agency I know. Well, I don't like it, says Shouto. As he said, it's very much Endeavor. Izuku mentally hits himself. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean... It's okay, I'm glad you like it, he says. Maybe, if you like it, I can see some good in it too. They smile at each other. What follows is a few hours of Izuku and Shouto going around the agency. More than anything, Shouto trying to show Izuku all his favourite secluded hiding spots and all the best places to lurk when trying to listen in on a conversation. They run across the halls, hand in hand, and with joyous faces as they savour the hours of the very few days they have left together, the very few days of relative joy that they'll have. They hide in a corner, away from prying eyes and all things in their surrounding that intimidates them. They hide in a corner, giggled mutters exchange between the two of them as they laugh at the silliest things they can think of. Silence falls over them as Izuku laughter slowly dies in his throat. His pinky sits next to Shouto's on the floor, legs pressed against each other and head inches apart. I like this, says Shouto, smiling. I like it a lot. Like what? asks Izuku. I like sitting next to you, laughing next to you. Izuku smiles back at him. I like it too. Some more silence. It's been a long week, he finally comes up with. A way to bring the attention back from the complicated dynamic they've come up with. A way to forget about the predicament they'll be faced once they have to leave the comfortable bubble they've made for themselves. It really has, says Shouto. I don't want to be here, but Izuku doesn't really know where here is. At the agency? On holiday break? Next to Izuku? It'll be okay, right? It's just one more day. Shouto goes fully silent, and his face takes on something Izuku can't recognize. And it dawns on Izuku. It's just one more day. One more day where Shouto will be Shouto, not just Todoroki. One more day where he gets to wake up to a mat of red and white hair and an oddly cold breath next to him. The very few days before they have to go back to their normal lives, to their usual day-to-day, to their mutual understanding of what it means to be unique, yet their inability to express it to one another. Do you, starts Izuku, do you think things will still be like this once we get back? Shouto seems to ponder for a second. His fingers idly trace patterns on the floor next to Izuku. I hope so, he says. Izuku doesn't say anything. Shouto's pinky makes its way across the gigantic 2-inch gap in between their hands. He lays his finger to where the sides of both their fingers touch each other. A clear invitation for physical contact, yet enough space to where he could back out if he wanted. A decision to make, a gap to bridge. Some other metaphor for connection that Izuku can't think of right now, but that would still be useful in describing the emotional distance and fragility that separates the two of them. And it's his decision. It's his decision to accept this. It terrifies him. He lays his finger on top of Shouto's slowly and hesitantly, like a fawn drawn to water in the middle of an open field, like the shaking finger of a piano in the late afternoon as you try to remember the notes to Fur Elise, like when you hold your pen between your shaking fingers as the pain in your hand increases, like the way you carry a butterfly that sits on your red and white hair as you try to move around the school. His finger lays on top of Shouto's, and it's a scary motion, despite the fact they've slept together, danced together, and existed together for months. It's scary because this time to Izuku it means something. This is where the border between friendship and romance falters. This is where their fake relationship is put through its greatest test, greater than their family, greater than their friends. This is where their fake relationship is faced with something eternally larger, their own feelings. Shouto's finger flips over and curls around his, interlacing them as they sit speechless and with only the distant yells of Burnin in the background. The silence in the agency is not one Shouto has ever liked, but maybe here, with Izuku by his side, he can learn to embrace it. The next day goes by far quicker than Shouto can even begin to imagine, and by the time he's even beginning to think about telling Izuku what he feels, there's a suitcase packed on his well-made bed, and a lack of an extra toothbrush in his bathroom. Next thing he knows, they're on the train back to Izuku's house, and then he's dropping him off and waving goodbye at him with the melancholy of a long-lost lover. To an end comes everything Shouto has held dear for the past week. To an end comes their short-lived relationship. He's left with a feeling of emptiness to his chest, a need to reach out and run back to Izuku's house, an urge to sweep him off his feet and love him, mind, body and soul, an urge to shout at the world his love and make a big, stupid declaration of love, an urge he has bottled up and sworn off years ago. But he doesn't, because he doesn't know what he'd do, and so they move on, they keep on living, they go to school. Chapter 9. School Air Fuck Ups Your Hair. School without Izuku, now that he has forgot all that happened over his short-lived Ogogia, is close enough to agony to where he has to toss and turn in his bed, his empty bed, that is, without hope of sleep. He's never been bothered by it before, which makes it more strange, comfortably used, previous to the escapade, to Izuku's absence at the end of the day. His heart would sink, and loneliness would flood through his room. But he'd go to sleep, wake up the next day, and do it all again. He lays on his bed, a week after they started classes again, staring straight up as he lays in his dorm room bedsheets. There is nobody next to him. There is no one to come out of his bathroom door with a smile and sparkles in his eyes. There is no one to steal his shirt in the mornings, and no one to tease him over his bedhead. He stands up in silence, head aching and spinning, before he pulls on a pair of pants and a nightshirt. If he can't sleep this off, then he might as well go have something to eat. Maybe play one of the video games that Kaminari had been so adamant in spending their precious class funds on. His feet land softly on the cold linoleum floor, with each precariously measured step he takes, quietly travelling through the halls in such a way where he won't make a noise. Everyone must be asleep. He passes by Uraraka's room, light still on, and can't help but wonder what she must be up to. He remembers Midoriya had said something about going shopping with her. Oh yes, he declined the invitation to go with them, and he'd also declined the invitation to watch movies with her and the others, mostly out of fear for what he would do with Midoriya so close to him at such a late hour, and with his head half in the clouds. He startled out of his meticulous routine with a voice behind him. "You should be asleep," he hears, and flinches in reaction. He turns around to see the one and only Hitoshi Shinzo, half sunk into and partially parasitic to the couch. His eyes barely peek out of the blanket he lays under, until he pulls his whole body out of the mound of fabric and stares at Shouto with tired eyes. "And you should be in your own building," quips Shouto. He hears a scoff and a partial laugh. "Had training with Aizawa and collapsed on the couch earlier today. Everyone just kind of forgot about me," he shrugs. "And your guy's coffee machine works far better than ours. Does it? I think it works pretty bad. Yeah, laugh it up from your upper-class throne. Whatever, I'll be using my upper-class privilege to make myself some tea. Do you want anything? I'd be honored if your highness would perhaps consider making a peasant like myself a cup of black coffee. Sure, whatever. He gets to making drinks as he idly listens to Shinzo tap away at his dimly lit screen. The sound of the boiling kettle, electric kettle, that is, and a coffee machine simultaneously going off in the background. He sits down next to Shinzo once it's done, enough distance in between them to set down a small tray, acquired on Momo's insistence, also with a precious class fund, with the 2 cups on it, Shouto's own plain white cup, and Kaminari's purple with bright yellow sparkles replacement cup, which everyone knew was just Shinzo's cup with a fancy name. He takes a short sip on his drink, barely letting the liquid filter through his teeth in the silence. Shinzo sets down his own cup with a light clink. So, says Shinzo, what brings you here at such a late hour of the night? Early hours of the morning, whichever one it is. What brings you here? Can't sleep, says Shouto. Shinzo laughs. Yes, I gathered that much, but you don't seem like the type to be an insomniac, says Shinzo. His fingers trace the top of his mug as he stares at the remaining coffee in it. I've just been plagued with thoughts, is all, says Shouto, which is probably too much already. Shinzo perks up in curiosity. Nothing more? And what, pray tell, could cause the son of the #1 hero to be plagued by thoughts so late in the night? I feel like you're prying too much into this, says Shouto. The other boy simply smiles coyly. You're gonna tell me anyway, you know you are. And I don't even know why. It's not like we're close friends. Are we not? And he's right, to a degree. Shinzo is someone he is well acquainted with, someone who he only knows in context like this. He doesn't really know what to call these late-night talks, something akin to that. Meetings that had started out of pure chance and had developed into something similar to a genuine friendship, a mutual understanding of each other whenever they had the occasional meeting. Very casual, very odd, and very far apart. And yet, here he is, sitting next to Shinzo, spilling all his secrets and thoughts. And strangely enough, this is not the first occasion. He shrugs and lightly reaches to poke Shinzo. I suppose you're right. So, says Shinzo, what's bothering you? Shouto taps his fingers against the porcelain of his own mug, scratching his fingernails on it. You know Izuku, yes? What kind of question is that? Yes, I know Midoriya. Who doesn't? Shouto smiles. I spent our break with him. You did? Which day? Where did you go? Shouto stays silent for a second. He reaches for Shinzo's hand and makes him look into his eyes. Shinzo, I spent all of break with him. "You what?" he whisper yells. Long story short, his mum was out of town, and I accidentally told my dad I had a boyfriend, so I asked Izuku to be my fake boyfriend, and he spent the week at my house. Again, "You what?" Shinso gapes at him and blinks rapidly a few times. "You are so stupid." "Thank you, newfound close friend," replies Shouto. "Why ever would you do that? Why didn't you ask me?" "First, because I didn't know we were friends until 5 minutes ago, and also, my father would kill me for bringing back someone from general education," replies Shouto. "Also, why would I ask you?" Shinso raises his eyebrows at him in amusement. "Because unlike Midoriya, you don't have a mind-boggling, nauseating, tooth-rotting, disgusting crush on me. Or at least, I hope you don't, or else this is about to become a very uncomfortable conversation." Did everybody know about my crush on him before I did?" Shinso falls silent and blinks at him a few times. "Are you telling me you just realized you have a crush on him, and that it only happened because you were basically living together?" "Yeah, pretty much." "You are so fucking stupid." "I like you more when we weren't officially friends." "Too bad, so sad. Cope." Shinso swishes what's left of his coffee before downing it all and standing back up from the couch. Stretching lightly, he walks towards the still half-full coffee pot and begins to pour himself some more. "So, what's the problem? You have a crush on Midoriya, so what?" What do I do?" He can hear the sound of the splashing liquid in Shinso's mug over his own whispers of panic. "Easy," says Shinso. "You tell him." Shouto is brought back by a wave of emotions that hits him. Sorry? "You have to tell him. It's the only way to get your heart to settle back down." Shouto scoffs in his direction. "That sounds terrible. What if he doesn't want to be friends after? What if he hates me and never talks to me again?" asks Shouto. "And what would you know about romance anyways?" "Hey, my being Ara Ace has nothing to do with my ability to give romantic advice. If anything, it makes me more capable since I am not biased." "That sounds like a stupid theory." "You sound like a stupid theory," quips Shinso. "Either way," continues Shinso, "you have to tell Izuku how you feel. Would you rather he reject you now and work it out later? That sounds terrifying. You suck at this. Or would you rather watch him get married, knowing maybe, if you'd been brave enough, you might have had a chance if only you told him how you feel?" "Oh, I hadn't thought of that." Shinso sets his cup down on the counter and flops lazily on the couch. "Just food for thought, lover boy." Shouto rolls his eyes at him before Shinso begins to kick at Shoto's thigh with his foot. "Now scram, unless you're staying down here." "No, thank you." "Okay, well, I'll see you some other night." "Until next time, I have to tell Izuku I'm not a licensed official." "Wait, what?" but Shouto is too far gone to hear Shinso's cry of exasperation. Chapter 10. With this ring. And it is this that takes us back to Izuku's very normal day, or at least was going to be a very normal day. I don't want to officiate your wedding. A moment of silence. Shouto, Izuku speaks up. What are you doing here? Izuku stands up from his bed and gives a brief wave of dismissal as he excuses himself and goes out through the door, one hand on Shouto's chest and lightly pushing him while a jumble of words spills out of Shouto's mouth. Izuku smiles. He doesn't know why he's smiling. He shouldn't be smiling at seeing his friend in such a state, but he can't help it. The sight of Shouto shouldn't bring him sheer and utter joy in this way. Not if he plans to keep his feelings buried deep inside his chest. Izuku, are you listening to me? Izuku smiles. I'm glad to see you. Shouto takes both of Izuku's hands into his own dual-tempered ones. Izuku can feel his pinky wrapped around the outside of Izuku's hand. He can feel the way their fingers touch and the way their skin feels against each other. He smiles again as he looks down. Izuku, you have to listen to me. I really don't want to officiate your wedding. Wedding? Shouto, what are you talking about? When we get older, says Shouto, and you get married to some pretty girl, and she walks down the aisle, and all her friends are there, and there's Bakugo as your best man, and you stand next to Urako, who's your fiance's maid of honor, and then there's Eri, oh my god, there's Eri, and she's in the most beautiful dress Aizawa could get her, and Kota is also there, and he's in a tight suit. He hates it, but he puts it up because he's heard you mentioned it once or twice. Shouto, what is this? Shouto pointedly does not answer his question, and rather keeps on rambling. And Aizawa and Nezu are also there. Aizawa still looks like shit, but Shinso's dragged him along, so they're sitting in one of the front rows. Nezu is there because he really wants to give a speech about you. Oh yes, Recovery Girl is also there. And then there's going to be All Might. He's sitting next to your mum, and he's talking about how you're the best son ever, and he's looking at you, and you're looking back at him, and you're in the suit, midnight blue, since your fiance didn't like the deep green, the one you picked out, and you look incredibly handsome in it, even if your hair has been flattened out with tons of hair product, and there's a single strand of hair sticking out, and she's walking down the aisle, your fiancé, and she smiles at you, and you both have your vows in your hands, and then... Shouto lets go of Izuku's hands and starts to run his hands through his hair with unusual anxiety. And then there's me, and I'm in between both of you, and you look at me, and you smile at me because you're supposed to marry you two, and I can't do it. I can't do it because you're looking at me with that smile, and I'm reminding of the fact that this is only happening because I never told you just how smitten I am, and how much I love you, and how much you mean to me, because I never told you that it doesn't matter if I only realized I loved you this much over break because I know how much I love you, and I'm heading over heels for you, and I never told you, so now I have to look you in the eye and marry you off to someone, and I can't do that, so please don't make me officiate your wedding. Izuku stands there for a second. He takes in the sheer force of the wave of love that hits him, takes the brunt of the admiration and infatuation that virtually radiates from Shouto. This shouldn't be happening. He's not supposed to be loved. He's not supposed to be an object of the affections of anybody. He's supposed to admire and love and give and not receive anything back. He's not supposed to be the focus of all these heavy, complicated emotions that twist and turn and crash into his sides whenever he thinks about Shouto for too long. His eyes begin to water as he watches Shouto breathe heavily. Beady tears start to form in the corner of his eyes until it becomes too much and they start to softly slide down his cheeks. Shouto, are you ordained? That seems to shock the other boy out of his spiral. Sorry? How do you plan on officiating if you're not even ordained? I didn't. Silly Shouto, thinking he's going to marry me and my made-up fiancé and not even being ordained. Izuku reaches for Shouto's hands and brings them closer together. He can feel Shouto's breath, cold and minty, on his own warm skin. He presses his forehead against Shouto's and draws circles on his skin with his thumb. Did you mean it? About being in love with me? Shouto looks at Izuku with utmost admiration. He looks at Izuku like he is the last remnant of some religion he's been blindsided by. He looks at Izuku like he's the most beautiful piece of artwork that there is. More than anything. Izuku laughs. He laughs with his whole chest. He laughs with his smile reaching his eyes and his tears rolling out of his eyes. He laughs as he takes Shouto's hands and loops them around his waist. He laughs as he brushes Shouto's hair out of his face. Laughs as Shouto stares at him dumbfounded. He laughs as he brings Shouto's face down to his, as he presses Shouto's lips against his own. Shouto's kiss is all teeth, Izuku realizes. The boy's lips hold all the naivety and inexperience of a shaking kitten, all the gentleness yet blindness of a newborn fawn. The duo uses hands shakily reach to where Izuku's unruly curls meet at the nape of his neck, along the green-haired boy's cheekbones, holding him dearly and tenderly to where Izuku could pull away if so wanted. Not like he plans to anyway. Izuku himself is not exactly a stellar kisser either, of the way his lips feel too small for his already diminuate face, and his nose really pokes Shouto's blushing face as he does his best to reciprocate the kiss. He tries to move his head a little as he closes his eyes, trying to find that slot between himself and Shouto that he reads about in books but finds himself unable to, and rather ends up making the teeth clash against each other in a movement that borders on painful and is uncomfortable. Shouto doesn't complain, but does tether on a shaking unclenching of his teeth and letting them create a small gap further into his mouth. Izuku's hands blindly pat along Shouto's chest until they were able to find the sides of his face and hook his arms around Shouto's neck. This seems to egg the boy on as he curls his hands where they sit, and his lips press harder into Izuku's. A breathy sigh exits Izuku at the movement slowly pushes Shouto back against the wall, his tongue teasing along Shouto's teeth in an effort to explore as much of him
as this 20-second moment will allow. Shouto melts into the touch and move as he starts to curl his hands into Izuku's hair itself, lightly playing with the swirls and tangling it up in a way Izuku knows will remind him of this moment when he tries to brush it tonight. Izuku can feel the ticking countdown of remaining air reaching its end as he slowly parts from Shouto's lips, mere millimeters away from the others as he wills his eyes to look up towards Shouto, staring at him through his long eyelashes. Shouto stares down at him with hazy eyes and an expression that can only be possibly described as lovesick. The boy starts to lean down back towards Izuku before Izuku stops pressing a finger to his lips and a small kiss to the corner of them. "You kiss with your teeth," whispers Izuku, breath still on Shouto's mouth. "You kiss with your head," comes the laughing reply. "Yeah, well, I didn't really know what to do." "And you think I did?" Izuku laughs. Shouto stares at him. "Would it be too much if I proposed to you right now?" Izuku is shocked, yes, but he finds himself smiling. "Sorry? You look particularly handsome when it's dark, that is, so I thought that you'd better secure your wedding fantasy," laughs Izuku. Shouto grumbles in embarrassment and blushes deeply. "I thought I'd kiss you into forgetting I said all that." "I thought it was sweet," says Izuku, as he finally caresses the side of Shouto's face. In my defense, you can blame Shinso for that disastrous part of my love confession. "Did he tell you you were going to officiate my wedding?" "No, I came to the conclusion on my own. He just mentioned how it wouldn't be fun to watch you get married to someone. How it would be better if you cut me off right now rather than living in heartbreak." "Both of you are disastrous." Izuku smiles at him, bringing his face back down for a long, breathy kiss. He goes slower this time, like he's trying to savor every part of Shouto, like he's trying to memorize his movements, to map out his feelings on his face. "You're so silly. I love you." And it's the first time Izuku's said this out loud. The first time he explained his feelings so openly and so freely. The first time he's brought himself to say out loud the part that had been quietly growing inside him. "I love you too," says Shouto. And it's true. It's truer than anything he said. More genuine than anything he's ever uttered out to anyone. Izuku brings him back down for another kiss, and he can feel his heart swell with emotion. Yeah, maybe he can get used to this. Maybe he can create a brand new normal. And maybe Izuku's normal days can become Shouto's normal days too. Naruto gets the call at the lovely, precious, valuable hours of 4 o'clock in the morning. He sits up from his bed and Shouto's contact flashes on the screen. He's far too tired for this, but if his younger brother is calling him, then there must be some sort of reason as to why he's waking him up at a time like this. He answers the call and holds the phone up to his ear, yawns once before speaking. Hey Sho, what's up? The room is silent as Shouto listens to his little brother talk at a rapid speed and with an audible smile on his face. I'm very happy for you, says Natsuo, still sleepy. More silence in the room. The moonlight filters through his window. Oh, that's sweet. The gears click in his head. Neurons make connections to each other as he processes the words. Yeah, just a quick question. What do you mean you just started dating Midoriya?